Start streaming. Fuck, I forgot I gotta deal with that shit too, don't I? Yep. Okay. Hello. Hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time of night or day it happens to be, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to Republic News. I am your hostess, Liviana. Tonight, I'm doing something a little bit different. I ordinarily do a precinct show on Fridays, ordinarily, but I have missed the past. Well, no, I have a couple of them that are not public at the moment. I'm going to be editing them and then re-uploading. So, I have done 12 pre-Saints shows, and this is my first post-Saints show. And I think I'm actually going to change the name of it to Post-Saints, because the real Post-Saints show would have been last night, when they do their show on Friday evenings. If I had done a show after that, it would have been a post-show, but this will be a post-show. So, yeah, I'm going to change that right here, right now. And this is my first post show, or my first post show even. I've never done a post show, and I don't intend to, because I don't want to step on Gator's toes. He does the post show. I'm not sure he does one every Friday night. He may do them on Wednesdays instead, because they do a midweek show as well for the Saints. Anyway, so this is my Lives Post Saints episode 001, and the title of the episode is Operation Gladio. You can look that up if you want to know what Operation Gladio is, or was. So, as usual, I will be going over some recent news. So, let me see here. I told my boyfriend, now he's stepped away for a moment, but he will be back. Told my boyfriend he can talk about the history article that I had found. And so, okay, so I'm going to take this one about what the courts have ruled recently.
What they ruled?
That's right. What did they rule? Well, as soon as this opens, I will. Okay, so this is from the website stupiddope.com, and it's by Jesse James, published on the 7th of December, so it's a little older, but it was only called to my attention quite recently. It says, look, courts rule workers cannot be denied employment due to medical cannabis use. I think Walmart's going to be upset about that. Well, that's too bad. So the article says, with the move to legalize medical and recreational marijuana, early programs failed to fully extend protection to medicinal users against employment discrimination. That is starting to change as the word comes down today that courts have ruled that workers cannot be denied employment due to their use of medical cannabis. Connecticut healthcare worker Caitlin Knopfsinger was interviewed by the Bride Book Health and Rehabilitation Center in Niantic, where she had applied. Knopfsinger openly disclosed her use of medical marijuana in order to treat her PTSD. Upon a drug test result of positive for THC, the nursing home withdrew the job offer. She went to court in 2016, and recently Judge Jeffrey Meyer in New Haven ruled that the nursing home had violated an anti-discrimination provision of Connecticut's medical marijuana law. There have been similar rulings against employers by state courts in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, which begins the reversal of an earlier trend. California, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington all ruled in favor of the employers in previous cases. Paul Armentano, the deputy director of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, stated, quote, "This decision reflects the rapidly changing cultural and legal status of cannabis and affirms that employers should not be able to discriminate against those who use marijuana responsibly while off the job in compliance with the laws of their state." End quote. This is certainly great news for medical marijuana users, while the American Bar Association called the Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island cases, quote, "an emerging trend in employment litigation," end quote. So, that's, just says, give us your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for much more on this coming very soon. So that's interesting, and that's good. Do you want to read the history about the Titanic now, baby?
I don't know what this is. Oh, yeah, the fire thing.
Yeah.
Titanic was on fire. This comes from Medium by Eric Brown. The Titanic was on fire for days before it hit the iceberg. I don't know, this seems kind of asinine to me. I'm sure you all know the story of the Titanic by now. Massive luxury liner deemed the unsinkable ship. Hits iceberg, goes down, half the people die, something like that. Very sad. Oh, and Leonardo DiCaprio died. Aww. Fuck you, Kate Winslet.
Well.
Well, there's new evidence. By a man called Sean Monley, is a journalist in Ireland. He's been studying the Titanic for 30 years. Dear God, how did you not get bored? I mean, I guess if it's your hobby or your passion, you ain't going to. He recently came across an amazing discovery hidden in an attic in England. These are pictures taken of the Titanic by the shipbuilding firm before it left the shipyard. Among these pictures shows a 30-foot-long dark marking on the hull, where the iceberg was known to have struck the ship. This mark was judged by engineers at the Imperial College of London to be caused by a coal fire that took place in the three-story high coal bunker of the ship. Yeah, I kind of hoped that coal would catch fire because that's how things moved. Let's see. This is all the problems with coal fire. Wait, what? It's been burning. Okay, that's an unrelated coal fire that's been burning for about 56 years in... what's it called? Centrilla, Pennsylvania. Blah, blah, blah. Don't care. In the Sean Molyneux's new documentary, Titanic, The New Evidence, he examines the damage of the coal fire in the area in the coal bunker where the fire broke out was against one of the main bulkheads of the ship. These are watertight holes designed to keep seawater from spreading in case of a hull breach. Molyneux interviewed Dr. Gilmore Raine of the Imperial College of London. Dr. Raine concentrates in the science of coal fires. He estimates that the temperature of that fire could have hit around 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. Dr. Raine also says that usually by the time a coal fire is noticed, it's probably been burning for days or even weeks. The testimony of the coal stokers and firemen aboard the Titanic seemed to indicate that the bulkhead by the coal area was significantly damaged by fire. Some even reporting a movement of metal or a buckling. Nothing was readily done to address the damage. It also appears from the previous picture that a visible mark on the hull is present from fire damage as well. Although let's keep in mind of that one picture that alleged that time travel was a real thing when really it was just a woman scratching the side of her head. Let's just keep things in perspective here, people.
You're talking about the picture of the woman with the supposed cell phone or something?
Yeah, and people were running around the internet for weeks saying, time travel's a real thing, time travel's a real thing. No. Let's just keep our heads on, people. Another issue that has always caused confusion was the Titanic's speed. It was running at full speed when crossing the Atlantic Ocean, even when there were warnings of icebergs in the area. Well, yeah, the captain's kind of negligent. I mean, 2 weeks prior to getting the captaincy of the Titanic, he hit and sunk another ship in the Bay Area, in the London Bay Area, or one of the England bays. It was pretty bad. Don't worry, he got off full ship. He got off. He did nothing wrong, according to the courts. Did nothing wrong. It's all the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
There were rumors that the ship was trying to break some kind of speed record, but the Titanic was not built for speed. The mammoth ship was a luxury liner. Moloney indicates that this could have been caused by the fire lighting activities. In order to fight the fire, the stokers had been shoveling the burning coal into furnaces to burn the fire away. If the stokers had been shoveling as much coal as possible, that could be the reason for the speed of the ship. As excess coal was burned, the engines worked harder, generating more speed. The stokers had been shoveling coal into the furnaces non-stop for 3 days, fighting the fire during the maiden voyage. Moloney thinks this is the reason why the ship was going at full speed when it hit the iceberg. Well, yeah, I'd hope when you throw more fuel onto a fire, it'd burn faster or hotter, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
At 11:40 p.m. on the 14th of April, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg which tore right into its hull. Right after the strike, according to Moloney's documentary, the bulkhead compartments appeared to be doing their job at holding the water back. The Titanic's designer happened to be aboard the ship and evaluated the strike damage and seemed to think the ship wouldn't sink, as long as the bulkheads were held up. However, one of the main bulkheads had been damaged by the previously reported fire. Moloney reports from a transcript of the American inquiry into the sinking, where a lead fireman / stoker, Fred Barrett, reports about a failure to the bulkhead. Barrett had been below when the iceberg struck and took refuge in a watertight compartment in the ship. He actually stood behind the bulkhead that had been damaged by the fire. Approximately 2 hours afterwards, Barrett reported seeing, quote, a wave of green foam come tearing from between the boilers, unquote. At this point, the bulkhead failed and Barrett escaped the incoming torrent of water. In Moloney's investigation, the ship began sinking rapidly after this event. The conclusion is the documentary is compelling and seems to make logical sense. The hidden fire caused damage to a bulkhead in the ship. The speed of the ship was due to the excess burning of coal to fight the fire, although the failure of the bulkhead was due to the incredible heat generated by the coal fire, which was right against the bulkhead. In Molyneux's opinion, if the bulkheads had held, the passengers on the ship may have been rescued. There was a ship hailed on the way. If the Titanic could have stayed afloat for a few hours longer, a historic tragedy may have been averted. The bulkheads were the Titanic's prime defense for the ocean, blah, 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 blah. Molyneux also searches into why the ship would leave with a fire on board. According to interviews conducted and research into White Star Line, the company who operated the Titanic, the company was in financial trouble. There had already been a delay in the introduction to the Titanic. The sister ship of the Titanic had also been damaged, causing more economic losses. It appeared that the Titanic would have to sail or the company might have imploded otherwise. There are those who differ with Molyneux's conclusions. How David Hill, a previous secretary of the British Titanic Society, disagrees with Molyneux's findings. Hill admits there was a fire, but in the grand scheme of things, it really didn't make any difference. The iceberg was the prime villain. Molyneux can't prove all his theories completely, but there's lots of evidence to back up his claims. The ultimate thing can't be denied is that there was a fire and it was burning at the time of the voyage. The image of the Titanic has been associated with ice, but it appears a new image of fire may have yet to be adapted. Despite the new evidence appearing, nothing changes the facts that the story of the Titanic is a tragedy. The events that happened could have been avoided, and all of those unfortunates aboard needlessly die horrible deaths. In the end, the only thing the new evidence shows us is a new level of negligence shown by White Star Line and their employees. A ship that was ill-equipped with lifeboats was sailed on fire through an iceberg-infested area at full speed. To make matters worse, man, they should just make that a movie. Oh wait, they did. To make matters worse, the British inquiry buried the testimony about the fire and moved into other aspects of the disaster. Even 100 years after this event, just restating those facts brings a level of anger to a modern reader, including me. It's not hard to put yourself in the shoes of those victims whose only crime was to believe that they were safe on board an unsinkable ship. I would also like to say that lifeboat regulation, that they actually had more lifeboats on board than regulations demanded at the time. Plus, they also had I'm trying to remember. I think it was like a little inflatable boat that they kept for the indoor pool, which they could use as a lifeboat. So they're like, nah, we're good. We're above regulations. And since then, it's been regulations to have more than enough lifeboats on board a ship, hanging off both sides of the ship. The problem comes in is that ships don't really sink like the Titanic did. They kind of go one way or the other, making half the lifeboats completely inaccessible. I would also like to note that James Cameron, considering he has one hell of an eye for detail and authenticity, and just keep in mind he went back and had all the stars digitally edited out of his movie when someone said that there would be no stars for that time of night at that time of year. So I would expect him to go back and digitally edit in some black smoke if this fire theory turned out to be true.
I did not see that movie, by the way. I've never seen it.
It was PG-13, and you see Kate Winslet naked.
Well, I don't care about seeing Kate Winslet naked.
And I saw it when I was 10.
Isn't she blonde or... Yeah, I don't... Yeah.
She dyed it blonde, and now you have an irrational hatred of blondes.
Yeah. All right, so...
Love that. Moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so the next article comes to us from NBC. I think it's NBC. Let me make sure where this comes from. I can't... maybe CNBC. NBC or CNBC. I don't know. It has the peacock anyway, so it's some kind of NBC thing, but I know it's not MSNBC. And this is from the 11th of December. It is by Carmen Chappelle. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez isn't even in office yet, and she's already pulling back the curtain on the inner workings of Congress. So there's a little bit of blurb at the top. And then it goes on. Although her first day on the job is still weeks away, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is already pulling back the curtain on the inner workings of the Capitol. The New York Democrat, along with other incoming freshman lawmakers, is trying to usher in a culture of openness that is enabled by a vast social media following. With nearly 3 million followers combined on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, Ocasio-Cortez has used the platform to involve her supporters during the transition period before she takes office. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. In a series of pictures and videos on Instagram dubbed Congress Camp, she gave an inside look into the new member orientation, from choosing an office to voting for House leadership, while also showcasing the unique quirks on Capitol Hill. I'm hearing some echo from your speakers. So, okay, that's better. So she says, quote, in one of these videos, she whispers, quote, "Guys, there are secret underground tunnels between all of these government buildings." In another post, end quote. In another post, she polls her followers on whether she should choose an office with more space or one, quote, "close to our friends," end quote. But Ocasio-Cortez isn't just focusing on the novelty of her experience. Last week, she tweeted sharp criticism of an orientation for new members of Congress hosted by Harvard. The event featured corporate CEOs, but no labor representatives. Let's see. She tweeted, quote, "Our bipartisan congressional orientation is co-hosted by a corporate lobbyist group. Other members have quietly expressed to me their concern that this wasn't told to us in advance. Lobbyists are here. Goldman Sachs is here. Where's labor? Activists, frontline community leaders," end quote. Fellow freshman leader Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat from Michigan, echoed her criticisms. Tlaib said that Gary Cohn, former chief economic advisor to President Donald Trump and former Goldman Sachs executive, told the new members at orientation that they don't, quote, "know how the game is played," end quote. And Tlaib tweeted, "No, Gary, you don't know what's coming. A revolutionary Congress that puts people over profits," end quote. Ocasio-Cortez rose to the spotlight after defeating long-term. We know all this. Let's see. Her comments about her new role have also renewed long-standing debates on the financial challenges facing members of Congress and their staff. She has made it personal by revealing her own insecurities about her finances during the transition period. Let's see. She told the New York Times in an interview, quote, "I have 3 months without a salary before I'm a member of Congress, so how do I get an apartment? Those little things are very real," end quote. Many lawmakers struggle with the cost of living in Washington, D.C., even on the $174,000 congressional salary, going so far as to sleep in their offices to save on rent costs. Ocasio-Cortez has also made it a point to tell to talk about the economic conditions of congressional staff. Last week she tweeted, quote, "It is unjust for Congress to budget a living wage for ourselves, yet rely on unpaid interns and underpaid overworked staff just because Republicans want to make a statement about fiscal responsibility," end quote. Low salaries, as well as the prevalence of unpaid internships, which are often the first step to a full-time role, are seen as barriers to a more diverse congressional staff. Ocasio-Cortez pledged to pay her office's interns $15 an hour, inspiring other lawmakers to make the same commitment. She has also shared experiences that reveal the growing pains of an increasingly diverse Congress. Quote, "People keep giving me directions to the spouse and intern events instead of the ones for members of Congress," end quote, she tweeted during orientation. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see, is there anything else of interest here? So let's see. Yes. Eddie Scarry, a writer for the Washington Examiner, disputed Ocasio-Cortez's account of her financial hardships based on her clothing choices. Quote, he tweeted, quote, "Hill staffers sent me this pic of Ocasio-Cortez they took just now. I'll tell you something. That jacket and coat don't look like a girl who struggles," end quote. The tweet has since been deleted after widespread backlash. Representative Sean Duffy, Republican from Wisconsin, condemned the media for what he viewed as preferential treatment and coverage of Ocasio-Cortez as a freshman congressman in 2011. Duffy received negative reactions after telling a constituent that he struggles to pay his bills. Blah, 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 blah. And some more. This little Twitter spat between her and Donald Jr., which I think everybody has heard about by now. Let's see. The representative-elect has also received praise for revealing parts of the political system that are typically left in the shadows. Actress Kerry Washington, who stars in the political drama Scandal, commended Ocasio-Cortez behind-the-scenes revelations, tweeting, quote, "At Ocasio 2018, speaking truth to power, sharing the needed hashtag BTS of our democracy at work. So grateful," end quote. One follower tweeted in reply to Ocasio-Cortez, quote, "I'm learning more details about how the House actually works over the past 2 weeks than I ever did in the past 20 years, end quote. And let's see, Paul Musgrave, assistant professor of political science at University of Massachusetts Amherst, praised Ocasio-Cortez on Twitter for, quote, "treating voters as neither super sophisticated DC insiders nor as people who can't be trusted to make up their own minds, but rather as people who are curious and intelligent, but who aren't experts in DC process. Sometimes you don't need a new theory of politics to make change, just a willingness to state the obvious," end quote. And so there's that article. So you want to take the one about the Clinton Foundation?
Oh, yeah. Hang on. Pause the video. Don't need that crap. Go away. I don't want your stupid videos. The Hill reports. Go away, you stupid pop-ups.
You gotta use your ad blocker.
I do, but these are all the built-in pop-ups. It's like, did the Clinton Foundation mislead the IRS? State fillings suggest so. And the answer to this one, boys and girls, is of course. Of course. And no, I'm not going to do the Cenk Uyghur thing. I'm not an escape to scientific experimented gorilla. Let's see. When confronted by detractors, oh right, this is by John Sullivan, opinion contributor. So this is an opinion piece. When confronted by detractors, the Clinton Foundation often uses a line of defense. The charity is one of the most scrutinized in history, and no one has found anything wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because they all wind up dead. That's why no one finds anything wrong with it. But state regulatory fillings suggest this might not be true. In December of 2005, the Utah Division of Consumer Protection flagged a missing information in the Clinton Foundation's federal tax filing with the IRS known as Form 990. The state regulator specifically flagged the money spent on professional fundraisers and consultants that were excluded from the regular section of the filing. The state regulator urged the charity to file an amended IRS 990 form. An amended IRS Form 990 reporting professional fundraising/consulting fees on line 30. In particular, officials questioned why nearly $500,000 in consultant fees, which it wanted more detail. Question nearly $500,000 in which it. People need to proofread their stuff.
Or have editors that know how to do their job.
Why would we want that?
Well.
The foundation's taxes filing when the foundation's tax filing for the year in question, 2004. Just say the tax for 2004, you whatever.
Okay.
Showed $0 spent on the required line for fundraising consultant expenses, even though other documents filed with the IRS identified more than $400,000. Maybe they were all interns. Consulting interns.
Uh-huh.
Maybe they had 0-hour contracts. The review was standard for a charity seeking a license to operate in Utah. The response regulators got back was not so standard. Former President Clinton's charity declined to make the change, even though Utah was suggesting the foundation's federal tax form was incomplete or misleading. A foundation spokesman, a law firm representing the foundation wrote back saying, the problem with that the foundation faces is the enormous expenses of undertaking it would be to amend to 990. Given that obstacle, the foundation has no choice but to withdraw its application to register to solicit the public in Utah. Or, in lay words, the cost of properly informing the IRS and complying with federal tax laws was simply too much. So the foundation just ditch-looped Utah in a licensing request. There is no record of amended 2004 tax form by the charity, which means Utah's concerns about the possible missing information for the IRS wasn't addressed at the federal level. Well, yeah, because everyone's using the foundation as their own personal slush fund.
Mm.
Foundation officials confirmed the episode, but said they believe they did not mislead the IRS because other parts of their submission included fundraising consulting expenses in another category called other expenses.
Well, that's really precise, huh?
Yep. It's like, no. The only reason why we didn't claim we spent any money in consulting expenses is because we put that money in other expenses from which we paid our consultants. See? Yeah, just go to court with that. Our 2004 Form 990 is complete by IRS standards as we fully disclose expenditures in Part 2, other expenses, the Foundation said in a statement emailed to me. The Utah episode, a decade old now, and other state regulatory issues involving the Clinton Foundation are gaining new traction because they are included in thousands of pages of documents gathered in a whistleblower submission filed last year by a firm composed of former federal law enforcement investigators called MDA Analyticus LLC. That submission made with the IRS and eventually provided to the Justice Department in Washington and to the FBI in Little Rock, Arkansas, alleges there is a probable cause to believe the Foundation broke federal tax law and probably owes millions of dollars in tax penalties. That submission and its supporting evidence will be one focus of a GOP-led congressional hearing Thursday at the House. The Foundation strongly denies any wrongdoing. Well, it's the Clintons. Of course they would. I mean, come on, come on. Bill Clinton was the guy who forced Congress to literally define every single act, like every single sex act, as sexual relations or not.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why he could go in front of national TV and say that a blowjob was not a sexual act.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, sexual relations. There's a reason why they call him Slick Willie.
Well, he was a lawyer before he was a governor and president, so yeah. Alright, I sent you a link in PM. Go ahead and read that next one, please.
Let's see. But the charity potentially engaged in false statements for years, later inaccurately declaring in numerous states that it had been subject to an adverse regulatory action, while failing to disclose the Mississippi violation in 2002. The whistleblower submission to the IRS identified more than 100 state forms which the Foundation inaccurately answered. The Foundation conceded the errors to me, but suggested they were akin to minor traffic violations, pointing to a call by a tax expert 2 years ago that made such a case.
Goodness.
Likewise, in 2008, the Clinton Foundation's Aid charitable arm had its license to collect donations in Massachusetts involuntarily revoked before failure to file the necessary paperwork. Foundation officials blamed that action on paperwork failing to keep up with the changes in the group, which altered its name and eventually spun off from the Foundation. State regulators weren't told the old group's name had been allowed to expire. The records also show the Foundation received multiple deficiency notifications and had its license expire, once in the state of Georgia, usually because of late paperwork. At Thursday's congressional hearing, such evidence likely be cited by Republicans eager to raise the question of whether the Clinton Foundation got favorable treatment from the IRS and FBI and was allowed to skate, despite warning signs of technical violations. With the current investigation of President Trump's family charity already public, expect the GOP to question whether these are two forms of justice, one for the Clintons and one for the Trumps. Well, just keep in mind that people who tend to go against the Clintons mysteriously will end up committing suicide.
I mean, people were talking about this back in 2016, that all of the things that people were looking at were going to go nowhere, and that what they needed to pay attention to was the foundation. And we're only just now beginning to hear more about it. So I think that's kind of interesting. All right, so I sent you another article link in a PM.
Ah, fucking hell.
This one will be fun.
Establishment looks to crush liberals on Medicare for...
Liberals, indeed. You mean progressives, of course.
Quiet, woman.
Hey, hey, hey.
This is from Politico by Adam Get a New Last Name. From the 10th of December... Ah, okay. 10th of December 2018. So Monday. The United Front that helped Democrats save Obamacare just a year ago is falling apart over single-payer health care. Well, that's what happens when you take bribes from the insurance companies. Deep-pocketed hospital, insurance, and other lobbies are plotting to crush progressives' hopes of expanding the government's role in healthcare once they take control of the House. Private sector interests, backed in some cases by key Obama administration, and Hillary Clinton campaign alumni are now focused on beating back another prospective healthcare overhaul, including plans that would allow people under 65 to buy into Medicare. The horror. Those damn young people wanting to be healthy. Those damn poors wanting more. Don't they know it should only be old? Health is only a thing that the old and the rich should have.
Well,
this sets up a potentially brutal battle between the establishment Democrats who want to preserve Obamacare and the new wave of progressive House Democrats who ran on single-payer health care. We know the insurance companies and the pharma companies are all putting tens of millions of dollars into trying to defeat us, said Representative Pramila. How do you pronounce that?
Pramila Jaya. Wait, let me look at it again.
Pramila Jayapal.
Jayapal.
That's how I'm pronouncing it. I don't care. Who co-chairs the Medicare for All Congressional Caucus, which I take as a badge of honor. But they're so concerned about a good policy that they're going to put so much money into trying to defeat it.
She's from across the river there in Washington, Pramila Jayapal.
Yeah. The rift could come into view in the opening few weeks of the new Congress as the party, long bound by a need to defend the Affordable Care Act, aka Medicare expansion, aka Obamacare, tries to embrace a new healthcare vision it can carry into the 2020 presidential campaign. House Democrat leaders are already emphasizing the need to align behind a more pragmatic agenda, largely focused on shoring up Obamacare without peering too far into the future. Because incrementalism, folks.
Right, which is what they call it now, but they used to call it gradualism, and then Martin Luther King referred to gradualism as a tranquilizing drug, and they had to come up with a new name for it.
We want to continue promoting the idea of accessibility and improving the Affordable Care Act, said Incoming Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, Democratic from Massachusetts. That should be the primary goal we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have... Yeah, I can go... just because you have access to something doesn't mean you can get it.
Right.
I can go down to the car dealership and access one of their cars. That doesn't mean I can't get arrested.
Yeah.
I can go to my neighbor's house and get access to his TV. That doesn't mean he ain't gonna beat me up.
Well, there was new news today about I think it was a federal judge, not a Supreme Court, had ruled that the mandate, forcing you to buy into Obamacare is unconstitutional. So I think they've already screwed the pooch on that one and need to get something better now.
Well, didn't the Supreme Court already say it is constitutional?
Somebody else said it isn't. That was like today or yesterday.
No, I'm pretty sure the U.S. Supreme Court did say it is constitutional.
Well, somebody disagreed. Some judge. I posted
fuck him.
I posted a link to a video in the Discord, so you can look at it in a bit.
Too bad. It doesn't matter. The United States Supreme Court overrules them.
I don't know. It might have been the Supreme Court. Let me look and see who said that.
If it isn't the Supreme Court reversing its decision, then fuck everything he has to say. It literally does not matter.
Let's see here.
Or are we going to be throwing out the rule of law because feels before reals?
I don't know. Where is it?
Like so many things Republicans and conservatives do.
Where the hell is it? I don't see it now. I know I posted it here somewhere. Anyway, we can talk about that one later sometime. Go ahead and finish reading this article.
Let's see. A bunch of pharma... hang on, where did I... it's more of a mainstream position than it's ever been before, said Adam Green, co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, which maintains close ties to House progressives. This is hugely rapid advancement. There's this hugely... Wow, I can't fucking read tonight. There's this hugely rapid advancement towards Medicare for all, single payer, as not just eventual North Star goal, but as something that's increasingly possible. But major lobbies that fought shoulder to shoulder with Democrats last year are now working to derail such liberal ideas in order to preserve the status quo. Well, yeah, because they found out that the Republican plan, which was written by the healthcare industry, was pretty bad. That people did not like it. More than a dozen groups intended to press their point next year through the High Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, a vehicle to combat an expanded government role in healthcare. America's Health Insurance Plans and Blue Cross Blue Shield Association helped found the coalition alongside the Federation of American Hospitals, the big drug lobby Pharma, and American Medical Association. Since then, it added another 13 organizations, most representing companies, much to lose under a system that shrinks, or in some cases, eliminates private health care. Well, too bad, too sad, I don't care. I would like more of my paycheck to go to, say, my Roth. Well, I'd love to have enough money to get my Roth started, but right now I don't. So,
to get your what started?
My Roth IRA started.
Oh.
I'm already maxing out my 401k and my HSA. Saving for a down payment on a house. So the Roth IRA needs to wait for a bit. Medicare for all legislation would effectively eliminate private health coverage, and talk of greater government influence over healthcare has alarmed providers that contend Medicare and Medicaid currently pay only a fraction of what it costs to care for benefactors. That's because Medicare and Medicaid are government supplements to your health insurance.
And because what we're talking about is not Medicare for all, but National Expanded and Improved Medicare for All, which is more.
Not only that, but the government could actually negotiate with drug companies to lower prices and all that other fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The partnership, some of whose members began discussions within weeks of the Senate Republicans' failed Obamacare repeal vote in July 2017, is planning to launch a campaign featuring ads, polling, and white papers playing up the private sector's role and warning against further disruptions to the healthcare system. People involved with the group said Alexandria, a consulting firm Democrats often leaned on to highlight the dangers of the GOP repair bill, is producing research for the coalition. Or they could use that one study that said, let me try and find it. They should start keeping this crap in a folder. And no, this is not the Koch brothers' findings. Although they could use that one too.
Yeah.
It was.
But definitely, you are correct about the ability of the new regional governors, regional boards of governors would be able to negotiate with the pharmaceutical industries for lower costs on medications, HR 676, which would also standardize the costs of procedures across the board. So you wouldn't, like for example, if you wanted to get a root canal, you wouldn't have to shop around to find the least expensive dentist because they'd all be charging the same price for the root canal.
Well, it's not even just finding the least expensive dentist, it's finding the least expensive dentist that
will take your plan, right. And you wouldn't have to shop around to find someone who takes your insurance plan, right? Because all of
this was it.
Okay.
They don't have to use the Koch study, even though they could. This was done by the University of Massachusetts. Let's see. Medicare for All advocates receive an early holiday present. A new study from the Political Economy Research Institute at the University of Massachusetts finds that single-payer healthcare will save the U.S. $5.1 trillion over a decade, while drastically cutting working-class Americans' healthcare spendings. It's the most robust and comprehensive study yet produced on Medicare for All, which has been in need of easily citable research. And this research analyzes Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All from top to bottom, elaborating on several key aspects of the bill, including what the transition to a fully public, comprehensive, free at the point of use healthcare system might look like, and what impact the program will have on U.S. residents. Most significantly, it answers the most common single-player question advocates face. How will we pay for it?
You don't want to get me started.
Oh, I keep on saying the same place where we find the money to fight all. I don't know where it comes from.
It's the same place.
It's got to be an infinite place.
It's the same place. Congress will authorize the spending. Congress will authorize the spending, and the Fed will make the payment.
See, it's about 200 pages in length.
I keep getting sting. Is that coming from me or you?
No, but my chair needs some WD-40.
No, I'm hearing like a chime sound, and I think it's me. Oh, it looks like it's on Facebook, of course. You guys, hey, I'm streaming. Leave me alone.
Yeah, they don't know or care. Stop posting on Facebook. Get it off. And send insults to Mike Zuckerberg. Honestly, I've insulted that guy too many times on Facebook, and I've yet to be banned. What's it take?
I don't know.
Oh, wow. See, so how much do we need to raise? To come up with an accurate spending number, the Perry study takes two main factors into account. That demand for care will rise with universal coverage by bringing the total annual healthcare spending up from 3.2 trillion to 3.6 trillion, a highly likely estimate, and that massive savings, in administrative, pharmaceutical, and provider payment spending will then bring total expenses back down from 3.6 trillion to 2.93 trillion. Using 2.93 trillion as its annual target, the study then factors in already existing public spending, which accounts for over 60% of total health spending. This includes spending for Medicare, Medicaid, and other public programs, healthcare coverage for federal employees, and the $332 billion in tax subsidies the government currently pays to private insurance companies. Altogether, public healthcare spending totals $1.884 trillion annually, which we can then subtract from the 2.93 trillion target. This means the government will just need to raise $1.05 trillion to fund Medicare for all.
Huh. Yeah.
How? So, how are we going to pay for it, I hear everyone ask. Well, aside from going to the well that the military keeps going to, or shall we say the military-industrial complex keeps going to. Let's see. It says, the most important thing to remember when discussing taxes and Medicare is that the new taxes are not an additional net cost or spending burden. Rather, they will amount to a mere fraction of what Americans currently spend on premiums, co-pays, and deductibles, which will all be eliminated. Not to mention health savings accounts and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
Basically, and if you're not convinced, basically think of whatever it is you're currently spending on premiums and whatever it is you pay at the hospital, whatever it is you spend in your health savings account as a tax. Because that's essentially what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, think of anything you have to spend as a tax, if that helps. So the PERI quick to point out that there are many workable approaches to raising the needed 1.05 trillion in tax revenue, and their proposed methods are not definitive. Their approaches differ from the offered approach in Sanders' bill, for instance. But they explained they decided on these particular taxes in an effort to finance the program in a progressive manner, with the greatest savings going to the working class and the greatest burden falling on the wealthy. Here are the 4 taxes proposed in the study. 1. Business premiums. As a rule, these will be set at 8% less than what a business currently spends on healthcare. Employers that don't currently provide insurance will instead pay $500 per uncovered employee, with the smallest businesses excluded. So yes, all you people screaming, but my small business, and all you small business owners, you will be excluded. So keep your panties on. After 3 years, this will transition to a flat 8.2% payroll tax. This will raise an estimate $623 billion each year bringing us nearly 58% of the way to our goal. 2. A sales tax on non-essential goods. I think most states already have this. This is the proposed tax that will impact most working people, set at a 3.75% and exempting families who would currently qualify for Medicaid. It will raise an estimated $196 billion by applying to non-essential goods. It's intended to spare lower-income families who spend a greater percentage of their income on essentials like food and housing from being too harshly impacted.
Yeah,
It's a debatable approach, but as we'll see, it nonetheless leads to massive saving. I've got a problem with this because even if we say non-essential goods, well, outside of food, everything is going to be taxed.
Yeah, well, the sales tax always discriminates against the poor. It's something that the wealthy don't have to worry about, really, because they've got plenty of disposable cash, whereas the poor and working class are generally living from paycheck to paycheck, sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs just to try to make ends meet. And I have people that are talking about how, well, they need to live more frugally then, and I'm like, dude, do you even understand the numbers? Have you looked at them? Do you consider how much it costs just for fucking rent alone? And how much people actually make on what is minimum wage now? It's not enough. I did a thing on Google Plus a while back where I ran down the numbers, for rent and car insurance and auto maintenance and gasoline and heating and cooling and food and so forth and so on. And at the end of that time, I did it for 2 different categories: urban, people who live in an urban or suburban environment, and people who live in a rural environment. At the end of that time, the people who lived in an urban or suburban environment were coming out like $100 in the hole. And the people who lived in a rural environment were coming out like $500 in the hole. So, I mean, it's not like people can live more frugally. These are all necessary expenses. The only thing that I included that wasn't a necessary expense, and I only included it because it was something that was given in the in one of the sources I looked at for, how much cost of living is, was entertainment. So if you go to the movies or something like that, and they were saying that the average American spends about $110, I think was the amount, $110 a month on entertainment. So, I mean, yeah, so maybe that would balance out with the urban and suburban dwellers, but then you've still got $400 in the hole for rural dwelling people. Also, if you're going to keep talking about taxes funding things, you're going to get me started, and you don't want to.
Yes, you're going to get her started on MMT, and as someone who hears the
yes
on MMT too much, I don't want to hear it.
Well, anyway, your taxes don't pay for anything.
Yes. Number 3, a tax on net worth over $1 million. Yeah, I can see this one going down well with all the billionaires. A recurring tax of 0.36% on all wealth over $1 million. Dear God, it's like socialism. This will generate $193 billion annually. One of its stated goals is combating rising wealth inequality. But people keep telling me we're fine. There is no wealth inequality. Fake news. It will in fact reduce the inequality, but only slightly. For example, it will bring the average return for the wealthiest 1% of families down from 5.96% to 5.58%. This tax could easily be raised and the sales tax lowered. As PERI authors repeatedly say, there are many workable approaches here. Less than 0.5%? Good God. That's going to be like 2 steps away from communism. 4, taxing long-term capital gains as regular income. By taxing assets held for 1 year or longer as ordinary, which is how short-term capital gains is already taxed, the government could raise a nice $69 billion per. This will most likely impact the wealthy. Altogether, these proposed taxes will raise $1.08 trillion. This will completely fund Medicare for all and leave the program with estimated $30 billion surplus. But of course, most people just hear taxes and start going, no, taxes bad. Hashtag triggered. Hashtag socialism. Hashtag communism. And then everyone will invoke the Founding Fathers.
Oh, well. So...
And if we could bring them back... God, I know one of them was for temperance. I forget which one. I think it was Madison?
I don't remember.
Fuck, I know one of them just straight up wanted to ban all alcoholic drinks.
Yeah, that wouldn't have worked, though. I still don't know how they managed to get prohibition passed. It was just it was a stupid idea.
It was a massive temperance movement that did it. But yeah, even that guy, if he came back to modern America, would drink himself to death. Because you're like, wow, you guys fucked up hard. I'm done.
Yeah.
And shit, if we could bring all the original family... Shit, if we could just bring back Washington. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, aside from having him study up on what we've become since he died. And then we'd send him back. And then if he could go back into the past... He'd be like, nope, guys, call this whole revolution thing off. I've been to the future. Seriously, it sucks. We're better off under British rule. Trust me on this one.
No, because those guys are arresting people for saying, quote, offensive, end quote, things on social media now. I mean, come on. Alright.
Yeah, but I think he'd say, like, no, this whole American thing's a big mistake.
Alright, let me...
We've become the very thing we fought against. Seriously, let's stop this revolution. Okay. And the French went a bit crazy and chopped off all the heads of the nobility, in an angry artillery midget. Became emperor. How did this happen?
Okay, so you done with those articles now? Yeah.
Fine.
I got some stuff.
I'll link you the article so everyone else can read it.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, link me the article. Alright, let me grab that. Medicare for all is even better than you thought. Medicare for all is even better than you thought. Okay, so let me put it here. Okay. Alright, so I've got a couple of articles here about Beto O'Rourke. Let me see which one of these to look at first here. So, I mean, there was a thing, you know, there's a lot of hoo-ha about how Beto O'Rourke is supposed to be some kind of progressive champion now, and he's the white Obama and all this other hoo-ha. And he lost to the guy who lost to Donald Trump, right?
Well, to be fair, he was bashing the M16, AR-15 and calling for gun control in Texas, of all places.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So, okay, so here's an article. Now, these are strange because they're talking about, and this is from NBC News. So they're talking about polling all right, and straw polls and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I've seen like 4 or 5 different straw polls in the past week, and they have different top people at the top position. And in fact, this one doesn't. Well, let me just, so this is, this is from NBC News. Let me see. It was published on the, when? It was published on the when? Sheesh, I don't know. When was it published? Well,
December 11th, 2018.
No. Yeah, December 11th, 2018. And it's by Alex Zeitzwald, or Zeitzwald. Breaking news emails.
Get a new last name, Alex.
What?
Get a new last name, Alex.
Anyway, Beto O'Rourke narrowly tops wide open Move On 2020 presidential straw poll, Biden runner-up. And it says, an early straw poll of members of the progressive group MoveOn.org shows a wide-open competition for liberal voters in the forthcoming 2020 Democratic presidential contest, with Beto O'Rourke narrowly beating out Joe Biden. The poll, obtained by NBC News, shows a plurality of respondents, 29%, either said they did not yet know whom they would support or wanted someone else not listed among the group's more than 30 potential candidate choices. Let me see, I've got the actual... Yeah, okay, I'll get that. It actually says it's not, I don't know. The top winner in this poll was actually someone else, don't know, or other, with 28.8%. Beto O'Rourke came in with 15.6%. Joe Biden 14.9%, Bernie Sanders 13.1%. And it goes on to, I'll read the rest of that in a bit here, but let me go through the article a little bit. The most popular potential candidate was O'Rourke, Democrat from Texas, who was selected by 15.6% of respondents, followed by Biden at 14.9%, and then Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, with 13.1%. It's another sign of O'Rourke's surprising popularity among national Democrats and potentially troubling indication for Sanders, whom Move On endorsed in the 2016 Democratic primary. That year, 78% of Move On members voted to back Sanders over Hillary Clinton. These 3 men were followed by Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat from California, who garnered 10% support, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, with 6.4%. Meanwhile, Senators Sherrod Brown, Democrat from Ohio, Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg were each selected by about 3% of members. Ilya Shayman, executive director of Move On Political Action, said, quote, "While the race for the 2020 Democratic nomination for president remains wide open and Move On's endorsement is up for grabs, Move On members and progressives across the country are clear. They're looking for candidates who will rally voters around a progressive vision of building a country where every American can thrive, whether we're white, black, or brown, rich, or poor," end quote. Oh, she added, quote, "We'll be challenging prospective candidates to inspire us with big ideas in the months to come, including at a series of events in early voting states in early 2019, end quote. Move On, which was founded during Bill Clinton's presidency, is one of the largest progressive online organizing groups with millions of members across the country, so its endorsement has been coveted in the past. This year, the group plans to hold a series of events in early presidential nominating states as part of its endorsement process, which is ultimately decided by a vote of its members. Yeah, so let's see. Yep, that's it. And it listed all of the other people in its poll in the body of the article. I'm going to have to say I don't really know that modern progressives regard Move On as all that progressive of a group.
Well, he's the white Obama. How can you not call him progressive?
Yeah, see, but Obama wasn't progressive either. So in response to this, I have another article from the Chicago Tribune. It's a commentary. Beto O'Rourke is not the progressive some imagine, by Elizabeth Brinig. And let me see, do I see a date anywhere on this? I'm not seeing a date. Anyway.
December 6th, 2018.
Okay, thank you. If only the electric chill in the air were an augur of fast-approaching holidays and not the static generated by so many Democratic 2020 presidential hopefuls jockeying for the attention of party leaders and donors. Alas, with 2019 less than a month away, 2020 has already begun, and with it, the fashioning of fresh new faces for the Democratic ticket. Among those early frontrunners, at least in terms of intra-party enthusiasm, is Beto O'Rourke, the three-time congressman from El Paso, Texas, who recently lost a valiant Senate run against Ted Cruz. Like I said, he lost to a guy who lost to Donald Trump. For some well-positioned Democrats, O'Rourke, usually mononymously styled as Beto, is already heir apparent to Barack Obama's empty throne. Tall and reedy, with an affable air, he does seem fit to take up Obama's mantle, but I can't get excited about O'Rourke, though I am from Texas and had hoped as much as anyone for Cruz's defeat. Hey, I'm right with this woman here, Elizabeth Brinig. Yeah, I'm also from Texas, and I hoped for Cruz to be defeated as well. She goes on, I'm not sure we need another Obama or another of any Democrat we've had recently. I think the times both call for and allow for a left populist candidate with uncompromising progressive principles. I don't see that in O'Rourke. Yeah, I'm right with you there too, Elizabeth. She goes on, there's no denying that what O'Rourke's campaign accomplished was genuinely impressive. With the help of veteran Bernie Sanders organizers, O'Rourke's team built a grassroots army that put democracy, talking to constituents, listening to their points of view, inviting them to participate in the process not by mass mail, but by name, first. People were genuinely inspired by that and by the very notion that perhaps they could revive a dream that sometimes seems to have died with Barbara Jordan and Ann Richards turning the Lone Star State blue, and maybe someday. In the meantime, though, we have the national election to think about, and when it comes to national politics, O'Rourke is plainly uninspiring. As Zaid Gilani pointed out at Current Affairs, O'Rourke's congressional voting record signals skepticism about progressive priorities. Gilani wrote, quote, while the Democratic base is coalescing around a single-payer health care and free college, O'Rourke sponsored neither House bill. During his time in Congress, he never joined the Congressional Progressive Caucus, end quote. Instead, O'Rourke is a member of the New Democrat Coalition, a centrist caucus with Clintonian views on health care, education, and trade. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Not only did O'Rourke not sponsor H.R. 676, the National Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act, or single-payer health care, whatever you want to call it. That's the official name, National Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act. Not only did he not sponsor it, but he has stated during his recent campaign against Cruz that he would sign on to it if he won the election, if I recall exactly. And he didn't win, but he's still in office until January, but I guess it's not going to matter because he wouldn't be there to, but he could still, do it now. But
Cruz?
They also asked him at some point recently if he were a progressive, and his response was, I don't know. He's taken a large amount of contributions from individuals working for and executives in the petroleum industry. He does have a fairly decent record on the environment, but and as for this Congressional Progressive Caucus, I'm not really impressed with their progressive credibility either. They don't seem very progressive to me. A lot of them are also bought and paid for. And then referring to the New Democratic Coalition as a centrist caucus, no, it's not centrist. I know that they like to call themselves centrists, but they're not. Right center, and left are terms which apply to economics. The reason that these fools call themselves centrists is because they want to take right-wing economics and mix it with social liberalism. But you're talking about two different axes here, two different dimensions. So you can't take liberal social ideas and mix them with right-wing economic ideas and call yourself a centrist. You're still a right-winger, dumbasses. That's what neoliberalism is. It's an extreme right-wing economic perspective. It is a type of corporatism. It is a sibling of fascism, which is another type of corporatism.
So are we going to get back to the
Yes. But I have to talk about it a little bit. Otherwise, it would just be us reading the news, and we do make some comments on what we read, right? So
you go off on tangents.
So the difference now, there are a number of rhetorical differences between fascism and corporatism, such as the fascists claiming to be nationalists and neoliberals openly espousing globalism, but in practice, fascism tends to involve going around conquering your neighbors and aspirations of world domination and so forth. So, you can talk about being a nationalist all you want, but if you want to conquer the world, you're a globalist. I'm sorry, kids. That's just the way it is. But those are, like I said, those are mostly rhetorical differences because, in practice, they don't actually wind up being nationalist. They wind up being imperialist. But there is a substantial difference between the two. All forms of corporatism involve either a union of or collusion between the state and corporate power. In fascism, the state retains its upper hand, and corporate power is made to serve the interests of the state. But they do, prop it up and favor certain corporations over others and the like. In the case of neoliberalism, however, government becomes the servant of corporate interests, and you have this kind of revolving door thing that we have in the United States today, where, for example, you've got Goldman Sachs executives who come in to run the Securities and Exchange Committee or Commission or whatever it's called, and you have petroleum industry insiders who come in to run the EPA, and you've got people from Monsanto on the FDA and things like that, and then you've got people who leave elected or appointed office and go to work for these corporations. So there's this kind of revolving door thing going on. You've got lobbyists who are writing legislation and handing it off to representatives and senators for them to introduce, in an open session of Congress. That's a big difference. Now, ultimately, the end result of neoliberal corporatism would be a point where national governments become irrelevant, and at that point, multinational corporations could quite simply dispense with the facade of national governments, and because there wouldn't really be any need for them anymore. We would already be living in a neo-feudalist society at that point. And then you have the objectivists and neo-objectivists, which are...
back to the article.
Hush. Which are also right-wing. They're far right, not extreme right. They're not corporatists because they don't want to prop up, industry or corporations. They don't want to do subsidies like the neoliberals do and tax cuts and whatever. Or they want to give tax cuts to everybody. But the end result of the objectivist scheme would be the same as that of the end result of the neoliberal scheme, because
objectivists want to be slaves to corporations. Done. Back to the article.
Because they want to deregulate everything and get rid of any kind of oversight or that kind of stuff. So anyway, yeah.
And if you paid attention to that whole thing, please press 1 in the
hush
or the chat.
Hush. So
I know I wasn't.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to spank you later. Now, where it comes to Medicare for All, O'Rourke has been carefully unclear about his stance, as a Politico article from July notes that at least for a time he had sworn off using the terms, quote, single payer, end quote, or, quote, Medicare for All, end quote, instead using the less specific policy-neutral phrase, quote, universal guaranteed high-quality health care for all, end quote. His campaign website remains unclear, stating that he aims for achieving universal health care coverage, quote, whether it be through a single-payer system, a dual system, or otherwise, end quote. Now, this dual system that he's talking about is the public option, which they couldn't manage to get into the Affordable Care Act. That would have been, you know, a government health care insurance program, but that didn't happen. And the problem with the public option is that it has failed every time it's been tried before. Several states have attempted the public option, and it just doesn't work because you need to have one pool. The whole principle of insurance, healthcare insurance, is that everybody pays into a pool. Everybody that has a policy with this particular insurance company pays into a pool, and then the money that is used to pay for coverage comes out of that pool. Well, obviously, if you have people competing and have competing pools, then the public option pool is going to be smaller than the rest, and you're going to have all the wealthy people going to private insurance because they think they're going to get better coverage there, and so the amount of money in the pool for the public option is going to be insufficient. So there's the problem with that. But the whole point of National Expanded and Improved Medicare for All is that everybody pays into the same pool, and it's the same thing as an insurance company policy. You're paying into a pool now. You're covering people besides yourself now, and people, I don't want to pay for somebody else's health care, but you already are, dumbass. You're already paying for other people's health care whenever you get private insurance, huh?
Dear God, stop.
But it's true. It's true. It's true. Okay, so O'Rourke's other progressive-ish policy positions tend to follow along these lines. While some progressives, rallied by talk of a Green New Deal, have argued for higher taxes on oil and gas company profits, fossil fuel lobbyists to be banned from working in the White House and a whole economy overhaul, slotting Americans into jobs producing carbon-neutral infrastructure, O'Rourke's statements on energy have been surprisingly thin. He has called the decision between oil and gas and renewable energy sources, quote, a false choice, end quote, and proposes on his campaign website mainly to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, empower the Environmental Protection Agency, and enact energy reform. So, I mean, he is from Texas, and Texas is a big oil state, so, I mean, he's catering to the people that have been his donors. And none of this is to say O'Rourke's policies are the worst there are, or that he couldn't beat President Donald Trump. I think that practically any Democrat has a good shot at beating Trump, judging by how many Obama-Trump voters in the Midwest seem perfectly happy to flip back to blue during this year's midterms. But the primaries aren't even here yet, so there's no need to begin resigning ourselves to policies that are merely better than Republican alternatives. We still have time to pick a politician with a bold, clear, distinctly progressive agenda and an articulated vision beyond something better than this. The literal translation of hope change campaigning. Beto is a lot like Obama, true. It's perhaps time for left-leaning Democrats to realize that may not be a good thing. As for me, my cards are always on the table. I wish the Democrats would run a left populist with sincere, well-attested antipathy toward Wall Street, oil and gas, welfare reform and war, who is willing to fight hard to win Medicare for all and drastically reverse our current course on climate change. I would love it if he or she came from Texas, but I would take one from anywhere. And apparently this was originally published in the Washington Post. Elizabeth Bruenig is a Washington Post columnist. So, yeah. Well, that was an interesting article there. All right, so since you're so eager to get started on another article, why don't you take this one about Mitch McConnell here?
Can I get Lord Blastington in here first?
Yeah, sure. There you are.
She would not stop talking.
Hush! Go ahead and do the one on Mitch McConnell.
Hey.
Hey!
Let's see, what's that walking turtle say? He looks like a turtle!
He does! I agree with you. He has no neck, does he?
Wait, you mean he's the turtle guy from The Master of the Sky?
Yes.
I wonder how many remember that movie.
I remember watching the Nostalgia Critic review on that one.
Yeah, like, I think that movie's pretty forgettable, aside from maybe a few fart jokes and the turtle guy, and... Oh yeah, that one actually had Brett Spinner in there as the villain. But that's mostly due to the fart... But they make him do fart jokes, like, basically.
Uh-huh.
The thing about, like, see, this guy who was actually... Who played one of the more iconic characters in The Next Generation, as well as doing several like Shakespearean plays and was on like several Broadway shows. They had him like have history in Broadway in the theater, and then they had him like do a bunch of fart jokes. Like just kind of imagine. Can you just imagine that? Like,
so what's this whole criminal justice bill thing?
Yeah, this is a good bill if they actually do it. I have seen Tim Black talk about it. I've seen a couple of other people talk about it. It would be good. It's about criminal justice reform, like getting rid of private for-profit prisons and things like that. So good.
Getting rid of them sounds like communism.
Yeah. Power to the people, comrade.
Senate Majority Leader Walking Turtle, in a shift announced Tuesday, the Senate would take up a long-awaited bipartisan bill that aims to reduce the number of people in nation's crowded prisons by adding more.
No.
At the request of the president and following improvements to the legislation that have been secured by several members, the Senate will take up the revised criminal justice bill this month, the KFC Republican said. He would have to turn it. He said he would turn to it as early as the end of the week. God damn it! Quit trying to sound smart, people. An unusual coalition of Republicans and Democrats, civil rights groups, and small government conservatives have pushed for the action on the Senate bill called the First Step Act. President Donald Trump also backs it. The effort to pass a Senate bill has stalled as McConnell remained reluctant to bring it to a floor vote by the end of the year. Then pressure began to mount on him from Trump and other Republican senators. The measure would give judges more discretion in sentencing offenders for nonviolent crimes, particularly drug offenses, bolster rehabilitation programs for former prisoners. It would also call for placing federal prisoners closer to home, no more than 500 miles, so families could visit more often. Trump said, "Looks like we're going to be passing, hopefully," famous last words. It's really something we're all very proud of. Tremendous support from Republicans, and I can't do the Trump accent, I just can't. Tremendous support from Republicans and Democrats. Lots of years been waiting for it. The measure has faced fierce opposition from Republicans, including Tom Cotton of Arkansas, who said it would free too many prisoners, including violent felons.
It might accidentally free some nonviolent drug offenders and leave room for, right now in Arkansas, they have what are called county trustees. Now, county trustee is a violent criminal rapist or murderer who is released to the county's jurisdiction instead of the state or federal penitentiary. So the county jail keeps these people, and they're allowed to roam around during the day. They just have to come back into the jail at night.
So they work on the honor system.
But
Must
you
be
know,
very effective.
you know why they do this is because of the mandatory minimum sentencing laws that they have for drug offenders. You have to give this person no less than this amount of time in prison just for smoking a joint, right?
So they get arrested. They can wander around the towns as long as they come back.
Well, they have to spend some time in the penitentiary first. I mean, it's like a sort of an early release thing. They let them out, but not really out, but they're kind of out. It's just a weird, fucked up thing.
I'm assuming they have like ankle bracelets or some way to track them. Like.
I don't know the specifics of it, but I do know that this happens.
I know, but I'm just trying to think like logically, like, see,
how do they do this?
This is what Tom Cotton represents. He's a fucking retard. The only thing he knows anything about is war, and he loves it. He's like McCain's bastard child or something.
Just like, okay, you get arrested, you spend some time in the prison, jails, whatever. Then you gain the ability to roam around the town.
Yeah.
Like what? Do they expect you to just go back at the end of the day on the honor system?
I mean, they must have some kind of ankle bracelets or something. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like that's what they normally do with people who are like on house arrest or probation. Like they actually put them like they have like an ankle bracelet or some form of way of tracking them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like that kind of sounds like that kind of sounds like the perfect use for it, like for those ankle bracelets. Like there's some kind of like system where they let you out for.
I don't know, and I would expect that Tom Cotton would be the type of person who would say, "Well, we can't do that. That would cost too much money."
Like to strap the ankle bracelets to
yeah, of course. You can't spend any money doing anything for the people, keep people safe or anything, but we can spend all kinds of money to go fucking attack Syria and Iran, and yeah, we got to do that because Tom Cotton is like McCain. He never met a war he didn't like.
Let's see, so far they only have 34 senators signed on to the bill. Sadly. Let's see. John Coram, Republican Texas, Senator Rand Paul, Kentucky, Republican of KFC, supported criminal justice. Predict the bill would pass. I think you'll see a number of Republicans now come on supporting this bill as amended. What the hell did they amend? Well, the article doesn't say. I want to know what they amended.
I don't
Basically,
know.
they're saying confident the vote would pass, Republicans would come on board. The fact that people are now know we're going to vote on it, it's going to cause people to have to make decisions. Paul, who co-sponsored several of his own criminal justice bills, said he expects close to 80 votes for the bill. Grassley, one of the lead sponsors, and Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat Illinois, launched a full-court press action for the measure. Vice President Pence and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, visited the Capitol to rally Senate Republicans. Oh, don't worry. You just have to put a little pressure on the Democrats and they'll fall.
Yeah, of course they will.
The bipartisan group of senators made some tweaks, securing more support from conservatives like Ted Cruz, David Perdue. The House passed the criminal justice bill this year, but advocates complained it didn't answer the controversial issue of mandatory minimum sentencing.
There you go.
In early fall, McConnell told the Senate bill's co-sponsor that if they garnered 60 votes, he would bring it up for a vote. Even after the groups passed that number, McConnell didn't budge. McConnell said it was on the Senate floor Tuesday it was Trump's support along with improvements to the bill that allowed him to bring it to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Cory Booker, a key player in the criminal justice debate, said there were discussions underway about details of the bill, but he said he was optimistic any issues would be ironed out. I just talked to the White House moments ago, and we're going to get it done, blah, 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 blah. Moving closer, just a bunch of people saying, hey, this bill's going to be good. Blah, 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 blah.
All right. So apparently part of the amendment is to deal with the mandatory minimum. You know, I had my cousin was started off his career as a prison guard and eventually rose up to be an assistant warden in the Texas State Penitentiary System. Then he was a sheriff's deputy for a while, and then he was a warden in another state. So I remember him talking about mandatory minimum sentencing and how it sucked. And I remember he was talking with someone else. I think it was one of my dad's friends. We were all gathered around in one of my cousin's houses because I think her mother had passed away. So everybody was there, you know, hanging out with the family and, you know, offering their condolences and so forth. And I remember Mike talking with, I think it was, that Campbell guy. I can't remember his name now. But anyway, so I overheard them, and I wasn't entirely sure what they were talking about because I didn't hear the words mandatory minimum. And so I was going to go outside to smoke, and I passed by and I said, are y'all talking about mandatory minimum sentencings? And they were like, yeah. And I go, oh yeah, they're bad. So, I mean, but they were both, I mean, you have this guy who's a prison, worked in the prison system for most of his life and was a deputy and so forth, and he's agreeing that they were bad. So, anyway. All right, then, let me see. What's the next item on the agenda here? Ah, yes. This is something from Florida. And I guess you all know about the Broward County shit, and
actually, I heard about this on like Philip DeFranco. Like, are you talking about like that the drill that people thought was real?
No, this is from CBS News, and it's thousands of mailed-in Florida ballots not counted, officials say. This is from the 10th of December, and I don't, maybe the author's name is at the bottom, but I don't see it at the top. So, reporting from Tallahassee. Florida officials say thousands of mailed ballots were not counted because they were delivered too late to state election offices. Three statewide Florida races, including the contest for governor, went to state-mandated recounts because the margins were so close. The Department of State last week informed a federal judge that 6,670 ballots were mailed ahead of the November 6th election, but were not counted because they were not received by Election Day. The tally prepared by state officials includes totals from 65 of Florida's 67 counties. The two counties yet to report their totals are Palm Beach, a Democratic stronghold in South Florida, and Polk in Central Florida. In the battle for Agriculture, Commissioner Democrat Nikki Fried won her election by 6,753 votes. Republican Governor Rick Scott ousted incumbent Democrat U.S. Senator Bill Nelson by slightly more than 10,000 votes. Under Florida law, ballots mailed inside the United States must reach election offices by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Overseas ballots are counted if they are received up to 10 days after the election. Now, this is weird in Florida because I know in other states, that I have never lived in Florida, but in other states where I have lived, It's like you have to have it postmarked by a certain date, and it doesn't matter how long it takes it to get there. They still have to count it. Anyway, it goes on. A group called Vote Vets Action Fund, along with 2 Democratic organizations, filed a lawsuit a few days after the 2017 election that argued the ballots should count if they were mailed before Election Day. But U.S. District Judge Mark Walker said the restriction was reasonable and that Florida election officials have a right to establish deadlines. He turned down an emergency request that all properly postmarked ballots received up to 10 days after the election be counted. The lawsuit, however, is still pending, and Walker asked that state election officials report how many ballots were mailed before Election Day but ultimately were not counted. Walker was the judge involved in a half-dozen lawsuits that were filed following the razor-thin elections in Florida. In a separate lawsuit filed last month, Walker gave voters extra time to fix their mail-in ballots if they were not counted because their signature on their ballot envelope did not match the one on file with local election officials. State officials testified in court that nearly 4,000 mailed-in ballots were set aside because local officials decided the signatures on them did not match. The Department of State last week informed Walker that his ruling resulted in 637 votes being counted in the final totals. Oh, so it was published on the 10th, and I still don't see any. It's from the Associated Press. I don't see any. So I don't know who wrote this. But anyway, so that's interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of weird crap going on with the elections in Florida. We know that Brenda Snipes that resigned finally, and a lot of people believe that she shouldn't just be allowed to resign. She should be fired and brought up on charges for violating federal election laws, destroying ballots when she was required to keep them for like a year and a half after the election. She destroyed them after I think it was 9 months instead of 12, or no, what? No, sorry, I'm sorry. After 15 months instead of 18, yeah. And on top of that, there was a legal case pending at the time, which had subpoenaed those records, and she knew about this, but she destroyed the ballots anyway. That was, yeah. So I mean, that's and there are people who are saying that, well, she's just incompetent, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't think she's incompetent at all. I think she's corrupt. She's big buddies with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and everybody knows that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the reincarnation of Boss Tweed, right?
Maybe the Russians made her do it.
It must have been the Russians, yeah.
Maybe.
All right, so let's see here. You want to do the Bernie Sanders DNC?
Wait, I just want to get straight. So basically, there was some kind of like voter fraud within the government in Florida that contained like lost ballots. So I think that sounds very familiar. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of shady shit going on in connection with Florida elections. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know that like Tim Canova got less than 5% of the vote in his campaign against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and it's just not even credible. I mean, so many people have supported Tim. I mean, he had a lot of support, and it just doesn't seem possible that he would come in so far behind DWS. But I don't know what's going to happen with that. I do know that he was trying to get a re-vote to do over, to do the vote over, because there was a lot of weird shit that happened. There were people that were bringing ballots in bags to a truck to have them delivered, and they were unaccompanied in their vehicles, and that's not right. You should have a member of each party in the vehicle that's transporting the ballots. And there was some other stuff. I don't know. I've talked about this before in one of the previous shows, so go back and check that out.
Say, in your opinion, do you think that, like in the 2000 election where they're saying that Al Gore would have won it, but there were like miscounted votes? Like, do you believe there's any truth to that? Like,
I don't know. You know what? The thing that bugged me about that whole thing, that whole election there in Florida, was that they were trying to do a recount, and the Supreme Court, or some federal judge anyway, had decided that there's nothing in the Constitution that allows you to do a recount. And I'm like, yeah, have you read the 9th and 10th Amendments, which talk about how the powers that are not enumerated in this Constitution as having been granted to the to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people collectively? So I mean, yeah, there may not be anything in the Constitution that allows for this, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done, because those powers are reserved to the states or the people. So there's that.
yeah, like, actually, I think I mentioned, like, there was actually another recent news story where this school had like this drill, but they kind of made it sound like it was real, like there was a real shooter on site. So
that.
Yeah, like I saw it on Filter Frankel, but I mean, you think about it, like, see, it seems like there's a lot of stuff that's going on in Florida. Like, there's something in the water, like that sort of thing. Like,
well, there is a Twitter account called Florida Man for a reason.
oh, I know. Like,
you follow that guy too?
I believe so, and actually saw, and I think there was actually this girl on Tumblr that actually do like short comic strips based on Florida Man art headlines. Like basically she read the headline, and she actually basically draws and sort of like a scene based on that. Like,
I remember there's a meme somewhere floating around that says, "Meanwhile in Florida," and it shows this guy like without his shirt on, if I recall correctly. He's got a beard, and he's got a baseball cap on, and he's riding like a kid's floating toy, like a duck or something, and the water. The street is flooded. He's out in the middle of the street in this floating device, flotation device for a kid, and he's got this bottle turned up to his mouth, just guzzling from it. And so, meanwhile, in Florida,
oh,
I mean, there is something there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's drugs, meth.
I might be feeling old, but I remember there was a time when New Jersey was the flood of all these jokes. Like, has Florida become like the millennial New Jersey?
Could be.
You know, like, I'm thinking, like, maybe they're going to, like, maybe in the future they're going to do, and we'll have reality shows in Florida.
Yeah, that would probably be pretty interesting.
Yeah, like that. But anyhow, like, I guess, like, maybe back to the point, like, it's kind of, like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Florida.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right, baby, you want to do the Bernie Sanders backers article, please?
Well, if you thought we were done with Florida, guess again. This takes place in Miami. A group of Bernie supporters are facing off against the DNC before an 11th Circuit panel Tuesday. Yeah, this was posted December 11th, 2018. They're fighting to resurrect their claims that the committee shafted them by favoring Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders in the 2016 presidential primary. Guess we get to relive this drama all over again. The Sanders Supporters urged the Atlanta-based federal appeals court, which held hearings in Miami on Tuesday, to revive a lawsuit in which they accused the DNC of shrugging off Sanders as a presidential candidate and diverting resources to help Clinton win the party's nomination for president. They dismissed the case last year in the Southern District of Florida. The lawsuit attempted to demonstrate the alleged Clinton favoritism by citing internal DNC emails which had been stolen by hackers and released on WikiLeaks. That's hacker.
Yeah,
Plural.
alleged hacker. There's no
All I
evidence.
know is the download speeds did not match that of an internet connection.
Yeah, there's a lot of suggestion and some evidence to support the idea that it was a leak and not a hack.
Gotta keep that narrative up. U.S. intelligence agencies have since linked the hack back to Russia.
Of course they have.
No, maybe all this weird shit's happening in Florida is because Florida's like, what, 20 miles from Cuba? And Cuba was an ally of Russia.
But even NPR says that the Russiagate conspiracy theory is probably not true now.
Dear God, the Russians have gotten to NPR. One of the hacked back to the article, I guess. One of the hacked documents that the Sanders supporters used as evidence in the lawsuit was a DNC memo that discusses a strategy to protect Clinton's public image while making no mention of any other candidate, according to the lawsuit. The DNC memo strongly indicates that the DNC's entire approach to the primary process was guided by the singular goal of elevating Clinton to the general election contest, the complaint states. An appeal on Tuesday in the 11th Circuit, the plaintiff's attorney, Jared Black, argues the DNC is trying to sidestep liability by portraying itself as an abstract entity without a duty to its donors.
You know, 1968 Democratic primary, only 11 states held primary elections. Everything else was decided by caucus either before or during the convention, Democratic National Convention. The person who was given the nomination didn't win a single primary. And the result was a bunch of anti-war protesters protesting this guy, Hubert Humphrey, the Hube, because he was pro-war. And the result of that was a police riot in which the protesters were accosted, beaten, arrested, gassed, all kinds of fun stuff. And the result of that was progressive grassroots action, which led to 22 states plus the District of Columbia having primaries in the 1972 presidential Democratic primary. So, yeah. I don't know that the Democrats want to go back to 1968. Do you guys want to go back to 1968? Because what happens after
JFK as president?
What happens after 1968 is 1972, where we nominate another progressive, and you guys go and form Democrats for Trump or whatever, and try to get him reelected.
Zombie JFK as president?
No, Jack Kennedy was dead by then.
That's why I say we revive him, make him a zombie, and elect him as president. What could go wrong?
Henry Wallace. We need Henry Wallace, man. All right, did you read all of that article?
No, it's a bunch of stuff that I don't care about.
But it's important because the stuff about the backroom cigar smoke and blah, blah, blah. That guy's name is Jared Beck, by the way, the lawyer.
Whatever.
He's all right.
Beck reasserted one of the case's central premises that political donors relied on the DNC's supposed commitment to neutrality when making their donations. The lawsuit seeks class clarification on behalf of Sanders campaign donors, DNC donors, and Democratic Party members in general. Counts for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, negligence, and violations of Washington, D.C., of a Washington, D.C. deceptive trade code are among causes of action. During oral arguments, U.S. Circuit Judge Adalberto Jordan seemed skeptical that certain counts in the lawsuit could proceed with the respect towards the Sanders donors' alleged damages. The judge said it would be a stretch to show causation between those damages and the actions of the DNC, given the DNC is an entity separate from the organization that accepted the donations, the Sanders campaign. Basically, the judge is saying, please do not kill me, Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Jordan further expressed reservations about the Sanders backing. The Sanders backers asking the court to hold that a political party has fiduciary duty to its donors. You don't have any precedent in relevant jurisdictions that goes anywhere close to what you're asking us to do. Well, you don't have to have precedent to rule on anything, dipshit.
Well, I mean, the Democratic Party charter says that they're supposed to be impartial, and if you're giving money to a candidate expecting the DNC to be impartial and for there to be a fair contest, then you're being defrauded out of your money. I think there is a law against defrauding people out of money, isn't there?
Oh, what was Debbie Wasserman Schultz's defense? Oh, right, I remember. We could have, if we really did rig the election, we could have rigged it so much harder.
Yeah, there were so many different ways we could have. And I'm like, yes, and you did some of them, you dumb bitch. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize to all bitches everywhere. That's not fair to you. Debbie Wasserman
She's
Schultz.
snorting coke in her free time.
She's something, all right.
She's snorting coke. You cannot look like that and not snort coke.
I'm not going to say what I think, but but yeah, I have my own particular opinion about her appearance.
Beck in turn argued that in a rapidly changing post-Citizens United political landscape, where money reigns more than ever, courts nationwide need to rethink the relationship between political parties and their members.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can refer Citizens United. That'd be a great start.
Yeah.
He maintained that his clients had standing to bring a federal court action not only because they sustained financial losses, but because the stature and the value, quote unquote, of the Democratic Party, of which many of them are members, was diminished. It was an argument analogous to a securities law case in which a shareholder sues over diminishment in a company's value due to a wrongful act by board members. Beck said the revelation of the alleged Clinton coddling significantly reduced the viability of the Democratic Party. Well, considering money was being shuffled from down ticket races into the Clintons' pockets, I'd say yes.
Yeah. I mean, is anybody really surprised, though, that it would damage the Democratic Party's viability?
No, the Democrats are perfect, and it's their fault for they didn't win. Obviously.
Nope. It's their own fault. They even told us they didn't need us. So, how'd that work out for you, you jackasses?
Okay, I just got to change the subject because I'm actually in Star Trek Online right now, and I'm actually right beside someone with the Bacteria warship, and for a ship of that class, it's huge.
Really?
Yes. I'm on my Jemadar character, and I'm in the Jemadar Dreadnought cruiser, and which is a pretty big ship to begin with. And
yeah.
The Bacteria warship basically is a tactical ship with stats similar to a escort, but it's huge. It's like the biggest ship in the game.
Oh, I want to take
ship.
my Valkus next to one and see how they compare. You know, my Valkus, that's the ship on my banner here on my channel.
The heavy dreadnought. Like it's not as big, but it's actually pretty much the size of almost any like sea star ship.
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest ship, as far as I know, is the Enterprise J, and I think the second biggest is my Valkus Temporal Intelligence Dreadnought Warbird. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I just like saw someone like warped in a Vengeance, and that big and the effect carry ship actually isn't still warped the effect carry ship like it's like that ship is huge like.
Mm-hmm. So
this article still isn't done.
As you continue, but they're kind of like changing the subject, and all it did, and that guy beside me with the Gemini carrier, and I'm just really gives me like a freak. I'm just kind of like amazed at how big the ship is.
That's what she said.
And also, when I look at it more, it does kind of look like a Discovery-style Klingon ship. The design, like...
You know, they were calling it a dragster, and what it looks like to me kind of is, do you remember the old Monsters TV show?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there was an episode of that where Grandpa was gonna go to the races, and so he built a little dragster out of a coffin, all right, and it kind of reminds me of that little dragster made out of the coffin.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you know, just from the pictures, I haven't seen it in person yet, so I don't know, it might look a little different. But the pictures that were on the Art News website, yeah, it kind of made me think of that a little bit. So, all right, so continue with the article, please, baby.
In August 2017 dismissal order, hang on. His line of arguments harkened back to the district court dismissal order last year. Too far ahead. Right. Beck said the revelation of the alleged Clinton coddling significantly reduced the viability of the Democratic Party. DNC attorney Bruce Spiva countered that the litigation is attempting to, quote, drag the federal court into an internal party dispute, unquote. He called the case a church fight, replete with boilerplate damage claims. His line of argument harkened back to the district court dismissal order last year, which tossed the case based on lack of subject matter jurisdiction. And that August 2017 dismissal order, Senior U.S. District Judge William Zloke appeared reluctant to grant relief on matters concerning the internal workings of the Democratic Party. AKA, he didn't want Clintons to kill him. I mean, he didn't want to commit suicide or get into any accidents.
Yeah.
Grave questions regarding the DNC's right of association would undoubtedly arise if this court were to enjoin the DNC to a particular manner of governance the ruling states. And those same concerns would arise with respect to any award of damages, which would impose liability for the DNC's alleged decision to associate with a particular standard bearer in a manner not otherwise prohibited by law. Zloke's decision found that the plaintiff had failed to plead a casual connection between their damages and the DNC. During Tuesday's hearing, Judge Jordan indicated that the lower court may have conflated the merits of the case with standing to sue. As he pointed out, the case was dismissed early in the pleading stage, when the court is generally obligated to give a plaintiff's allegations with the benefit of the doubt. Judge Jordan pressed the DNC's legal counsel to concede that the court should consider on the merits whether the donor's contributions were made in reliance to the committee's public assertions of impartiality. But Spiva, the DNC's lawyer, wouldn't buckle. In his serpentine exchange with the judge, he refused to acknowledge that the donor's alleged losses represented a cognizable injury in federal court. The DNC made a point of arguing that it did not comply, that it did not improperly favor Clinton, and that many of the hacked emails were taken out of context.
Oh, please.
Because, you know, email chains totally don't exist.
As far as damages, I think I'm out like $500 or
so. Let me finish, please. I just want to be done with this article.
Oh, you got another one coming up.
Fuck. This is my punishment, isn't it?
Yeah.
The committee is listed as a defendant alongside Congressman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the head of the DNC at the time the internal emails were released on WikiLeaks. She resigned from that position in 2016 amid the controversy surrounding emails and became Hillary Clinton's head campaign advisor. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Donna Brazil became the temporary head of the DNC and looked a bunch of questions to her.
Back over there. Sorry, I have a cat trying to crawl on me. I don't need you over here right now, pussycat. You need to go over there and lie down. Go over there.
That's the Common Dreams one.
The next one, yes, with Power to Kneecap, Common Dreams. And then after that, I would like for you to read the Fair Vote one.
Oh, god damn it.
Yeah, because I'm going to do 3 after that.
Close the stupid banner. This is by Dick Johnson, a staff writer from Common Dreams, posted December 6, 2018. With Power to Kneecap, bold demand, incoming Democratic Tax Committee chair says Medicare for all, not realistic. I'd just like you to note that he is a senator or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he's on the tax committee. I would like to note that this asswipe does get free health care.
Mm-hmm.
His family gets free health care. Your tax dollars provide it. I'd just like to point that out. Goddamn welfare queen. I say we make them pay for their health care. As House Democrats progressive House Democrats strategized to push a vote for Medicare for all legislation as soon as possible, resurging congressional and grassroots momentum for single-payer could soon turn into a serious obstacle in the form of incoming Ways and Means Committee Chair Representative Richard Neal, Democrat, Massachusetts, who denounced Medicare for all as not realistic. Because, you know, America's the only nation in the world, and the rest of the world doesn't exist. There's a bunch of poverty-ridden third nations. And will soon be in a position to tank healthcare plans that are unacceptable to insurance industry donors. Basically, if we don't suck their dick and reduce their taxes down to 0. Neil will have total control over what tax-related policies come to the White House floor, including legislation that will create Medicare for all healthcare system. Noted investigative reporter Eon Higgins in a piece for Sludge on Wednesday.
Wait, it's called Sludge?
Yeah. Apparently the website's called Sludge. Yeah, real reputable. Sounds reputable. Having Neil at the helm of the committee, rather than a more progressive member, makes it much less likely that House of Representatives will vote on universal health care measures. As Higgins documents, Neil, who served as the top Ways and Means Democrat since 2016, has received more insurance company cash throughout his career than any other member of the Inc., including Republican. Well, I guess we just figured out why he doesn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can end the article here, I guess.
Yeah, because he's sludge.
Okay, so go on and do the fair vote article then.
This one's from Politico.
No. It's from
What, you don't
fair
want me
vote.
to do the political one?
No, that's the one I'm gonna do.
Alright, fine. What's the other one?
It's right below it. Fair vote. It has a CD2 red main, red, white, and blue main.
Rank choice. This is from Fair Vote, December 13th, 2018, by Drew Penrose. Rank choice voting reaffirmed in latest court challenge.
Yay.
Because don't you know, democracy in a democratic nation is communism. And unconstitutional. People voting. What kind of horseshit is this? Don't they know they should obey their betters?
Goodness gracious.
When it became apparent that incumbent Representative Bruce Get a New Last Name, you idiot, would lose to challenger Gerard Golden. See? I like that guy's name. I can pronounce his last name. In Maine's 2nd Congressional District, he filed a lawsuit in court arguing that Maine's new use of ranked choice voting meant that he should be declared the winner instead. The lawsuit made a variety of claims, including one that has come up in court before, that RCV somehow violates the constitutional principle of one person, one vote. Oh God, if we're really going down this route. Because ranked choice voting permits voters to rank multiple candidates, some worry it does not satisfy the one person, one vote requirement. However, every court to have considered the question concludes there is no discrepancy because RCV treats all votes equally. Every voter has the right to rank candidates, and every voter has one vote for the highest ranked candidate to the highest ranked remaining candidate in every round of counting. As Judge Walker succinctly put it in his opinion, the point is that one person, one vote does not stand in opposition to ranked voting so long as all electors are treated equally at the ballot. Prior courts have agreed with Judge Walker's conclusion, including a unanimous 3-judge panel on the 9th Circuit of Appeal in 2011, the Minnesota Supreme Court in 2009, Massachusetts Supreme Court in 1996, Michigan County Circuit Court in 1975. Guy whose name I can't pronounce.
Poliquin.
Fine. Pelican and the other plaintiffs made other more novel arguments as well. Each claim was essentially rebuffed by Judge Walker. The plaintiffs claimed that Article 1 of the Constitution prohibits RCV. Walker wrote, I can assume this is the state constitution. Walker wrote, in the final analysis, RCV is not invalidated Article 1 because there is no contextual support for such a result, and because it is not inherently consistent with our nation's Republican values. In fact, the opposite is true. To the unsupported claims made by James Gimp. Yes,
Gimple.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Gimp. The EL is silent. By James Gimp.
Like,
James, the EL is silent. This is now true. Unsupported claims made by James Gimp, expert witnesses for the plaintiffs, that RCV is confusing to voters. Quote, there is no evidence provided to support that argument other than the conclusionary testimony of Dr. Gimp, which I have summarized and discount entirely. In fact, I find the form of the ballot and the associated instructions more than adequate to praise the voter of how to express preferences among the other candidates. Unquote. And to the claim that RCV somehow violates the First Amendment, there is no dispute that RCV Act itself, the product of a citizens' initiative involving a great deal of First Amendment expression, was motivated by a desire to enable third-party and non-party candidates to participate in the political process, and to enable their supporters to express support, without producing the spoiler effect. In this way, the RCV Act actually encourages First Amendment expression without discriminating against any voter based on viewpoint, faction, or other invalid criteria. While litigation has long been employed as a tool by those who feel threatened by the power of RCV gives to voters, it also provides an ample opportunity to prove RCV can stand to constitutional challenges, as it has before every judge to consider it. As Judge Walker wrote, the American experiment in Republican representative government neither began nor ended with the ratification of the Constitution. The values that informed Article 1 are not only inspired by the Revolution, but also continued a purposeful evolution in our national experiment in representative government.
All right, so then, and it notes that the full opinion is attached to the article, so I have provided the link in the video description for anyone who would like to read the full statement. So now, I am going to talk about the Green New Deal. I have two articles before me. One of them, I'm going to read, the first one I'm going to read comes from Socialist Worker, and the second one comes from the Green Party website itself. So, let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. We have another article for you to read too.
Oh.
But I will go ahead and read these two articles first, and then you can read the one about Oregon. You remember? You gave me that link yesterday, I believe it was. So,
stupid idiots.
Yeah. So, the first one, the first article I'm reading comes, as I said, from Socialist Worker. Socialistworker.org. What the hell are you doing, pussycat? Come on now, stop crawling on me.
No respect, I tell you.
I've given them food, I've given them water, they have everything they need. You need to get off of me, please. Socialistworker.org. This is by Zachary Alexis, published on the 12th of December. Winning the Green New Deal we need. And he says, incoming Democratic representative, a new proposal for a Green New Deal is breathing life into the climate justice movement. Incoming Democratic representative and Democratic Socialist of America member Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is pushing for a large-scale government-led transformation of U.S. energy systems away from fossil fuels by 2030, with a plan intended to benefit the working class and communities of color in the U.S. In tandem, activists for climate justice have kickstarted a new wave of protest. Hundreds of activists from the Sunrise Movement are taking action this week in Washington, D.C. to support Ocasio-Cortez's proposal. These protests are aimed squarely at the top leadership of the Democratic Party, which so far has rebutted efforts to get the party to refuse donations from the fossil fuel industry and to sign on to the Green New Deal plan. Now, they did briefly say that they were going to reject campaign contributions and so forth from the petroleum industry, but they backed out of that. They reversed their decision on that. I think it was this summer. Maybe it was last summer. I don't know. Anyway.
Was that the one where they voted by having the people stand up?
I don't know. I just know that they were going to not do it, and then they suddenly decided they were going to do it after all. So, yeah, this is typical partisan Democrat behavior. Establishment Democrat behavior, I should say. These protests are aimed squarely at the top leadership of the Democratic Party, which has so far rebuffed efforts to get the party to refuse donations from the fossil fuel industry and to sign on to the Green New Deal plan. Sunrise activists made a media splash last month when 200 of them occupied future House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's congressional office, an action whose profile was boosted when both Ocasio-Cortez and fellow incoming Democratic Socialist Representative Rashida Tlaib, who has a record of fighting for climate justice against the Koch brothers in Detroit, showed up to support it. This week's Sunrise actions are the latest in a surge of protest in the United States and elsewhere, as activists push forward with a new sense of urgency driven by a landslide of sobering news about climate change. This year has seen a series of alarming and deadly disasters fueled by climate change, including the summer's deadly heat wave and wildfires in Europe, a brutal season of typhoons in the Pacific, Atlantic hurricanes Florence and Michael, and the recent wildfires in California. Several mainstream institutions have issued recent dire warnings on climate, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, SR15 report. This is a United Nations body, by the way. SR15 report, Volume 2 of the 4th National Climate Assessment, and the Global Carbon Project's release of new data showing that global emissions increased again in 2018, led by emissions growth in China, India, and the U.S. In Britain, activists have kicked off a new campaign called Extinction Rebellion, which, like Sunrise, relies on high-visibility sit-ins and civil disobedience. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters in Poland took to the streets as global elites gathered for the COP24 climate meetings, the latest UN-led effort to unite world governments to address the climate crisis. In this context, the Green New Deal proposed is a welcome development, though somewhat opaque, calling for a special committee within the House of Representatives rather than a piece of legislation. Ocasio-Cortez's proposal lays out a framework for a suite of climate solutions far to the left of anything mainstream Washington could have dreamed up. It's an initiative that, in the words of Sunrise Movement founder Vashini Prakash, quote, matches the scale and urgency, end quote, of the climate crisis. According to the proposal, a select committee for a Green New Deal would have 1 year to develop an official plan as well as accompanying legislation for a large-scale economic, political, and social mobilization around climate change in the U.S. The proposal lays out 7 basic goals to be achieved by 2030, including 100% of U.S. energy from renewable sources, upgrades to building stock for increased energy efficiency, comfort, and safety, decarbonizing transportation, manufacturing, and agriculture while improving infrastructure, massive investment in the drawdown and capture of greenhouse gases, making green industries a major export of the U.S. to help other countries transition to carbon-neutral economies. These goals should be achieved, according to the proposal, via public financing mechanisms and public and cooperative ownership structures, with an added goal, quote, to virtually eliminate poverty in the United States, end quote, using measures such as guarantees to all workers of a living wage job, basic income, and universal health care. This is what we're calling federal jobs guarantee as part of the Green New Deal. Support to regions and communities that currently depend on the fossil fuel industry. Protection of indigenous nations and communities. Mitigation of the deeply entrenched racial, regional, and gender-based inequalities in income and wealth by prioritizing solutions for communities most affected by climate change, pollution, and other environmental harm. The Select Committee would be required to produce Green New Deal legislation in line with this vision by early 2020, in time to be a topic of debate for the next U.S. presidential election. Socialists can and should disagree with Ocasio-Cortez's ahistorical and uncritical praise of the original New Deal, including how it was a reluctant response to mass social upheaval and made disastrous concessions to racism. But we should also recognize the Green New Deal, GND, proposal as a tremendous opportunity to organize around the most comprehensive and radical climate reform proposal put forward to date on a national level, not just in the U.S., but possibly anywhere. Proposals for a GND have been floating around for years, most notably in Green Party campaigns run by Jill Stein and Howie Hawkins. In content, the GND framework shares a great deal with the Just Transition and Million Climate Jobs proposals developed by environmental justice groups and labor unions in South Africa and around the world. The basic idea is to combine safeguarding the environment by lowering carbon emissions with government-sponsored economic stimulus activity to create jobs, improve people's material well-being, and address historic racial and economic inequalities. It is significant that this sort of proposal is now ruffling feathers of establishment politicians in Washington. Like the rising Medicare for All movement, the Green New Deal is an indication of the left's growth and expanding ideological reach in U.S. society. Recent polling shows a deep well of untapped popular support for GND-type proposals. In this moment of incredible urgency around environmental degradation, socialists everywhere should celebrate the fact that movement-friendly politicians are creating space for activists to rally around a positive vision for the climate future we want. As leading environmental activist and writer Naomi Klein put it in The Intercept, quote, "We now have a something that has been sorely missing, a concrete plan on the table, complete with a science-based timeline that is not only coming from social movements on the outside of government, but which also has a sizable and growing block of committed champions inside the House of Representatives." End quote. Yet while it is backed by movement energy and cleverly designed to force Democratic Party leaders to take a stand and not hide behind their favorite boogeyman of Republican obstructionism, Ocasio-Cortez's plan has contradictions. By linking its timeline to the next presidential election, the proposal ties climate activists' hopes to the electoral fortunes of the Democratic Party, and it's far from clear whether all of the GND's new supporters in the Democratic Party are going to be as committed champions as Tlaib and Ocasio-Cortez in pushing this fight through a hostile party leadership. On the one hand, the Green New Deal proposal puts forward a radical vision for breaking with existing social and economic practices and power structures. On the other hand, it does so in a way that reinforces the legitimacy of those very same power structures. Now, this is one of the things that some of the people in the Green Party have been complaining about. But hang on just a second. This is a contradiction that the movement needs to work through, and it is one that demands the active engagement of socialists fighting for movement independence and against compromises in the name of political expediency. We should already recognize that activists can draw the right lessons to advance the struggle, as reflected in Sunrise's aggressive targeting of top Democratic leaders. Shortly after Sunrise's first sit-in at Pelosi's office, the group issued a statement that read in part, quote, "Words are not enough. 42 have perished in Pelosi's own home state of California from drought-driven fires in the last few days alone. Her solution is to resurrect the committee with no funding and no power to take legislative action. 10 years ago, Democrats tried this tepid strategy. Before a comprehensive plan was even finalized, fossil fuel executives and lobbyists swarmed to the table, diluting every proposal. What we need now are leaders ready to pass legislation that matches the scale and urgency of this crisis. All appointed members to this committee must reject campaign contributions from fossil fuel CEOs. If Pelosi fails to issue this mandate, it's time to step aside," end quote. In this way, struggles around a Green New Deal expose the uncomfortable coexistence of a new socialist movement growing up in close connection to a Democratic Party that opposes its proposals and activities. Activists are challenging liberal politicians who talk a good game on climate but who have yet to support the transformative changes that are obviously needed and who are compromised by ties to the fossil fuel industry. This is a significant step forward, one that will continue to develop in a positive direction if the struggle grows and with the active participation of more socialists. This goes on quite a few more paragraphs. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but I will, of course, as usual, include a link to the article in the video description. I do want to mention in connection with this, because I'm going to bring it up again in a moment, it does talk in here, it mentions the SR-15 report of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC. This is where the figure of 12 years is coming from. According to the IPCC report, we have 12 years, and only 12 years, in which to avert...
Ben Shapiro told me it stopped.
In which to avert the worst consequences of the impending climate cataclysm. It's too late to stop it, it's too late to reverse it. I mean, there is a way, but it's not guaranteed, and it would involve the deaths of millions of people, so I don't think anyone really sane would want to try that one.
Let's try it.
No, let's not. And so a lot of people in the Green Party have been upset, right, that we're not getting credit for the Green New Deal, which we've been talking about for over a decade. And a lot of people are upset because Ocasio-Cortez's version of the Green New Deal is not identical to ours. Well, so by contrast, here's an article from the Green Party National, from the Green Party US website. There's no author given, as far as I can tell. It has David Dunan's name posted over on the side, but I think he's just the webmaster. And I suspect that Starling Rankin had something to do with it, because she was the one who posted it to the Green Party of the United States Facebook group. So the piece is called "Green Party Urges Congress and States to Enact a Green New Deal on Climate and Economic Justice." The Green Party of the United States is urging Congress and state legislatures to adopt a Green New Deal, GND, to respond to the climate emergency while committing to a full employment sustainable economy. Howie Hawkins' Green Party campaign for governor in New York in 2010 was the first time a comprehensive Green New Deal agenda was promoted in the United States. It was based on a call for a Green New Deal in Europe, developed a few years previously by the European Greens and others. The GND was a central focus of Jill Stein's two Green Party presidential campaigns in 2012 and 2016. So it looks like maybe Ann Link, co-chair of the Media Committee, and Justin McCarthy, co-chair of the Media Committee, had something to do with this as well. This is from the 12th of December, and it continues. Green Party members and supporters participated in the December 10th National Day of Action by the Sunrise Movement and others to urge Congress to adopt the Green New Deal resolution supported by Congresswoman-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, more commonly known as AOC, and others. While many candidates in 2018 used the phrase the Green New Deal to highlight what a transition to renewable energy would help create living wage jobs, AOC's proposal for a plan for 100% clean energy by 2030, single-payer health care, and other economic measures comes much closer to the G&D developed by the Green Party. What is still left out is the necessity of degrowing the military-industrial complex and termination of its imperial agenda. So I'm going to pause right here to make a comment. I've heard a lot of people in the Green Party complaining that it's trying to do this through corporate activity rather than the public sector, and apparently that's not the case. According to this, what they just said is what is still left out is the necessity of degrowing the military-industrial complex and termination of its imperial agenda. It doesn't say anything about corporate blah blah blah. Anyway, so Mark Dunley, the recent Green Party candidate for state comptroller in New York, who helped initiate the Green New Deal as Hawkins' campaign manager in 2010, said, quote, AOC's proposal recognizes that winning climate justice means also winning economic justice, a right to health care, housing, a living wage job, and education. Her proposal needs to be expanded, including an immediate halt to any new fossil fuel infrastructure, a focus on public ownership, and a democratic control of the energy systems, and paying for it by enacting a cut of 50% or more in the military budget, end quote. This is kind of a thing. I have one of my videos recently where I talked about some of my disagreements with some Green Party ideals, and this is one of them. The Green Party in the United States platform does talk about what it calls greening the dollar and American Monetary Institute schemes to do things which don't need to be done because they're already there. Howard Schweitzer and Joe Bongiovanni and I myself have argued about this recently. But anyway, yeah.
And she didn't record it. It was sad.
It's in comments on one of Howard's videos. So if you want to look at it, you can go look at it.
What videos you cut out?
Huh?
What videos you cut out?
Howard Schweitzer. He's like a dude on he's the AMI guy for the Green Party, and Joe Bongiovanni is his advisor on AMI, which is American Monetary Institute. Anyway, yeah, I can give you a link to that later. Actually, I think I showed you. Oh, I've got a screenshot of it. I can just show you the screenshot. That'll work. So anyway, of course, I disagree with their AMI scheme because it's not necessary. They're trying to do things that don't have to be done, that are redundant, basically. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, sure, we do need to slash the military budget because it's not a defense budget, it's a war budget. I agree with that, but it's not a question of paying for it by slashing that. It's a question of paying for it by Congress will authorize the spending and the Fed will issue a check, right? That's it. The Green Party and AOC both call for a just transition that empowers those communities and workers most impacted by climate change and the transition to a green economy. It would ensure that any worker displaced by this shift away from fossil fuels will receive full income and benefits as they transition to alternative work. Funding would also be targeted to low-income and communities of color most harmed by climate change. Green parties across the planet have used their role as junior partner in several national governments to push for climate initiatives such as enactment of carbon taxes. Now, I've seen the Green Party has backed off of the carbon tax just in the past month or so. I'm not sure exactly when that happened. Now, Margaret Flowers, medical doctor, I know Margaret. She's co-chair of the Green Party of the United States. And I'm involved in a couple of projects that she kind of spearheaded. And the Health Over Profit for Everyone, which is about national expanded and improved Medicare for all, and the Green Power Project, which is to increase Green Party power. And she says, quote, "We would be happy to connect congressional Democrats with Green Party elected officials in other countries to explain how they can use their new role as junior partners in our federal government to move our country to enact their emergency mobilization needed to avoid catastrophic climate change. We need to make sure that congressional Democrats fight as hard as possible for climate action, not just use the GND as another campaign slogan," end quote. Here we go. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, recently said that the world needed, in the next 12 years, an unprecedented worldwide mobilization to avoid climate collapse. The Greens noted that previous IPCC reports have all significantly underestimated the severity and speed of global warming and extreme weather. I think it's Ralph Nader is calling it climate catastrophe, and I'm like talking about climate cataclysm myself. So anyway, the Greens faulted the National Democrats for recently reversing their position to stop taking campaign donations from fossil fuel companies. The Greens also urged the Democrats to work to block any new fossil fuel infrastructure development. Such projects are routinely rubber-stamped by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The Senate just approved a climate denier to chair FERC. The Democrats are also considering make a coal proponent, Senator Manchin, oh my God, the senior Democrat on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. This is Joe Manchin, oh boy. Noted D.C. statehood Green Party activist Justin McCarthy, who was arrested on Monday while participating in Sunrise Movement's Day of Action, said, quote, "We need to put an end to the use of fossil fuels. We cannot waste any more money building out fossil fuel infrastructure. President Obama took the wrong approach, promoting an all-of-the-above approach to energy that heavily developed fossil fuels, including oil and fracking of natural gas, while giving tepid support to renewables. We are at least a decade behind Europe, for instance, on offshore wind," end quote. In 2018, Green Party candidates across the country ran for state offices calling for a Green New Deal to move to 100% clean energy by 2030. The Greens also called for states to divest public pension funds and bank accounts from fossil fuel companies, to enact state carbon taxes to make polluters pay for the damages from burning fossil fuels, and to publicly own and develop renewable energy such as solar, wind, and geothermal. David Schwartzman, Professor Emeritus, Howard University, climate scientist and member of the D.C. statehood Green Party, said, quote, "With the Trump administration led by climate deniers in bed with the fossil fuel industry, it is critical that state and local governments pick up the challenge of stopping the burning of fossil fuels. But most Democrats and big environmental groups continue to push incremental steps on climate change that provide a false illusion of progress," end quote. One of the key warnings from the IPCC was that we need to lower the target to cap global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius rather than the old 2-degree target. This requires average cuts in greenhouse gas emissions of around 10% annually, yet many in the U.S. still promote a timeline of 2050 to cut emissions by 80 to 100%. And then there are some links to additional information and so forth. So there's that. Let me see here. There's a comment that I made on Facebook that I want to read here. Let's see here. I should have it right here handy. Yeah, here it is. So there was someone who had asked, in reply to this post that I've just read, why Greens are supporting AOC's version of the GND and called her version a charade or a charade. So my response to that was, quote, because we have 12 years to mitigate the worst effects of the impending climate cataclysm and can't engage in petty partisan sectarian squabbling. Because we need to act and stop behaving like children on the school playground. Because we would prefer to avoid an extinction level event. Because we don't have time to screw around with this. I want the system changed as much as the next Green, but we have 12 years. And even if we somehow managed to put all GPS people in both houses of Congress and the White House in 2020, that's not enough time to change the system. Meanwhile, we can support a modified Green New Deal now and hopefully avert at least some of the catastrophe. End quote. And then I came back later in response to someone else who was talking about how the Democrats were going to fuck it up or something. I don't remember exactly what was said, but I replied to him and said, quote, I know the Democrats have a history of co-opting progressive ideas and turning them into crap, but I also know that we'd not have direct election of senators, women's suffrage, and a host of other examples of progress as soon as we did get them, had one or the other of the two main parties, or both, not snagged some ideas from movements outside the two parties and from third parties and run them into the end zone. Does it really matter who gets credit when human survival is on the line? End quote. So, there's that. And so now, my love, if you would read the article about the Oregon shenanigans. Unless you guys want to comment on what I've just read and said.
I think this guy's complaining are delusional purists at this point.
Who? Oh, yeah,
People
well,
complaining.
yeah. I think a lot of it is just, you know, we came up with the idea and we're not even getting credit. And this is certainly true in the mainstream media because they don't want to pay attention to Green Party people. But I don't know if you can blame that on Ocasio-Cortez. You know, I mean, she's obviously calling it a Green New Deal, and only the stupidest people wouldn't know that it had something to do with the Green Party, right?
I don't know. They can be pretty stupid.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, because green could also refer to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's just easier and more PR friendly to say Green New Deal instead of the environmental new. Because, face it, the second you start talking about the environment, everyone assumes you're some kind of goddamn pot smoking hippie who just wants to sing Kumbaya all day.
Well, you know, I don't
Or an eco-terrorist.
want to sing Kumbaya all day, but I don't have any problems with hippies or with smoking pot all day.
You know, that's what everyone thinks of, though.
Yeah, I know. You know, and I didn't think the American people would be stupid enough to elect George H.W. Bush president in 1988, but boy, was I surprised.
To be fair, he did run on, we'll see. And he was the last president to not suck Israel's dick.
Who?
He was the last president not to suck the Israeli dick.
I don't know about that. He was pretty neocon. And back in those days, neocon had additional shit attached to it that was kind of religious dogma.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, like, is this video monetized? Because I think, like, saying something about Israel might be a way to get them monetized.
No, I can't monetize my videos anymore. You know, they changed everything
She got
because
in
of
after
that.
They changed the rules.
Yeah, I was able to until the new rules went into effect, but I never did, because the ads that they run, you don't get a choice in what ads get run on your content. And at the time, they were running ads from the Church of Scientology and Monsanto and Coke Industries, and
I just told her to take the money so you can have fun and insult them while they're advertising.
Yeah, well, I don't want them advertising on my content. I think that what YouTube needs to do, among other things that YouTube needs to do, is allow the creators access to advertisers so that we can negotiate with them ourselves, instead of YouTube imposing what they think should be on our content. Because I don't want fucking Koch brothers advertising on I don't want Monsanto. Church of Scientology. What the fuck would I want any of that shit on various petroleum companies? Why would I want them advertising on my content? I don't want to take money from them. It's blood money. You know?
I'll take money from you, and then I'll insult you behind your back.
No, but see, I have principles. I have standards, and I'm not going to sell my soul for filthy lucre. So there.
I don't. Let me enjoy all the
Yes, you do.
now.
I know better. I know you better than that, so don't even go there.
Yeah.
So you say.
Yeah, I do. You goof. Yeah. Alright, so go ahead and talk about this organ thingy here.
I may turn into a raging alcoholic, but I'll take your money. Right, this is from Willamette Week. Posted yesterday, whatever the hell today is.
This is the 15th, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, posted yesterday on the 14th. Some dumbass representative for the Oregon House is drafting legislation that would put an end to single-family zoning in cities of 10,000 people or more. Something about combating the homeless crisis. She says the state's housing crisis requires a combination of bolder strategies. Oregon needs to build more units, and we must do so in a way that increases housing opportunity for more people. Allowing more diverse housing types in single-family neighborhoods will increase housing choice and affordability. That's a fight I'm willing to take on. I would also like to note that a lot of people would like to live in Portland, but the apartment complexes are way too fucking much, and there's a crap ton of vacancy. So, for any of you idiots who are definitely pro-capitalist who say, well, if people want to live in there and there's not enough units, the prices will go down. Mm-hmm. Suck my ass. You don't know shit. Now go back to reading Ayn Rand.
Uh-huh. So, yes. Oh, you...
I'm still reading.
Okay.
Since you made me read.
Yes, I made you read this. Snap, crack.
There's something a gun to my head right now. Someone call cops.
Crack the whip, crack the whip.
Proposals or follows a similar move this month made by Minneapolis, Minnesota, where leaders have enacted a plan that will end single-family throughout that city. A decision hailed in the national press for its innovation. In a bold move to address its affordable housing crisis to confront a history of racist housing practices, Minneapolis decided to eliminate single-family housing, a classification that has long perpetuated segregation, reported the New York Times on December 13th. Portland has been dithering for more than 4 years on a proposal for what's called middle housing that recently was delayed once again. This time, the delays until summer. Under this proposal, as currently drafted, 4 units would be allowed in 96% of the city's single-family neighborhoods. Needless to say, this is definitely controversial. Faces fierce opposition from neighborhood groups interested in preserving their suburban-style housing, even in urban cores. And can you honestly blame them? I mean, you save for a down payment, put down the mortgages, and the city's like, no, we just want to... Like, we know you bought this house because you want the neighborhood, because you like the neighborhood, but fuck that, we're just going to build. But champions of zoning reforms say allowing smaller dwellings, breaking up single-family homes into multiple units create more housing and the chance to make housing more affordable in pricey neighborhoods. Reversing those zoning restrictions could go a long way towards addressing the need for housing, experts argue. Or you could force the renters, or you could force the landlords to lower the rents. I don't know. The crux of the matter is land. The crux of the matter is land, and is the scarce commodity here. Oregon economist Josh Limmer said this week in a blog arguing for people exploring this type of change. Outside of lowland sea flows, we're not making more of it as housing demand, which places upward pressure on housing costs. I personally propose a 3,000% tax increase to people buying homes who are not from Oregon. But that's just me.
I told
that would definitely drive housing prices down.
I told you my solution was to annex Northwest California and then build a wall to keep the Southern Californians out, and then Southern California will pay for it.
I don't want any of those California commies. I don't care if they are from the Northern California. They're all goddamn commies. Every single one of them.
Hey, now they're not. But anyway, yeah, you're right about this thing about the... something a lot of people are unaware of is that there are all these apartment complexes, luxury apartment complexes, supposedly, that are... The rent is way too high for anybody to afford, except, you know, yuppies from California. And mostly empty. The entire complex has like 2 or 3 people living in it or something. What's the deal
like
here?
100 plus units too. And it's like, yeah, oh, don't worry, the price will drop. The price will drop. Capitalism. You don't understand. It's like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah, that's the whole point of capitalism, is to accumulate wealth to a smaller and smaller number of people. It's not about competition at all. It's about building a monopoly if you can do it. And the only reason they can't do it right now is because we have these antitrust laws, but they've been kind of emasculated over the past 40 years. So, is there anything more in that article?
Let's see. What?
What?
There are a few ways for a neighborhood in the Portland of 2018 to be reserved mostly for the well-off, he wrote. But this was from Sightline Institute, Michael Anderson speaking. There are a few ways for a neighborhood in the Portland of 2018 to be reserved mostly for the well-off. But one of the most effective ways seems to be ban attached housing in 1924, the year Portland enacted its first single-family house zoning. Kotek's legislation is currently being drafted, but our official concept for the legislation sets a deadline of 16 months for cities to come up with a plan to allow duplexes, triplexes, and quads, as well as so-called housing clusters that applies to cities of 10,000 or more within an urban growth boundary. And the thing about duplexes, triplexes, and quads is you buy them in duplexes, triplexes, or quads, but since you're moving into one of these, chances are you don't have the money to do that, so instead you have to rent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how we're going to solve the housing crisis. By building more houses that you have to rent.
Yeah.
November's election, when Democrats won, ensured that the House will play a key part in legislative agenda next year, particularly a new attempt to pass tenant protections, including an end to no-cause evictions and an overturn on the state's ban on rent control. Yeah, that one's going to go down hard.
Yeah.
This proposal goes towards the other side of the equation by addressing a root cause of rent increases. Failure to build enough housing stock to address the shortfall of affordable units. Yeah, I can tell this bitch is from LA. Critics of Portland's proposal are likely to offer the same objection to Kotek's efforts. They fear it will cause the pace of demolitions to rise. Kotek attempts to address the concerns by proposing changes that the state's building code, which would allow single-family homes to be divided more easily into multiple dwellings. In her blog this week, Lionair discusses the long-delayed Portland proposal and it's possible for Oregon to achieve major results from one policy change by simply allowing for, not requiring, townhomes and triplexes to be built on existing lands. In the city of Portland, the policy can accommodate 1 out of 7 every new Portland area households in the coming decades, he wrote. 'Tis a big finding.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have one more. Russia is sending its bombers to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Calls U.S. reaction undiplomatic.
I know. Yeah, I posted an article about that in the Discord and
Well, I'm doing it here.
And maybe on Facebook. And I don't know if I posted on Facebook or not. I don't think I posted it there. I may have posted it on Twitter though. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. You guys go follow me on Twitter and Facebook if you don't already.
Basically, Russia infused Venezuela's government with cash, and in exchange, flew strategic bombers to protect it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's basically what happened, and people... And yeah. Basically, it's the exact same thing as what happened with Cuba. You can't... You fail to start a popular uprising. You fail to overthrow the leader. Country says, well, we really wanted to trade with you, but you're kind of giving us the cold shoulder. Who else can protect us?
There you go. All right then. So, yeah, I think there is a video. I think it was from the Real News Network that talked about this, and I linked it in the Discord at least. So, and there's another hint, hint, nudge, nudge for all of you. 1 or 2 people watching at the moment. If you're not in my Discord, there's a link in the video description.
Read the rules and guidelines.
Yeah, I read the rules and guidelines that say don't be an asshole and stuff like that. So, okay, so I have one article for the final bit of news tonight. This comes from Politico, and it was published on the...
Comes from what?
Yes, on the 9th.
You're roboting.
Oh. Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I guess.
What? Let me see what's going on here. No, everything's cool. As far as I can tell. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Alright then. So this article comes to us from Politico. It was published on the 9th. And it is by David Siders. You don't just get to say that you're progressive. The left moves to defend its brand. In advance of 2020, the left wants to make sure candidates aren't claiming the progressive label without supporting the cause. Now, Manhattan Beach, California, progressive Democrats are beginning to confront an unintended consequence of their own success, dilution of the brand. So many Democratic presidential prospects are now claiming the progressive mantle in advance of the 2020 primaries that liberal leaders are trying to institute a measure of ideological quality control designed to, I don't know why they're calling them liberal, because liberal and progressive are two different things. Designed to ensure the party ends up with a nominee who meets their exacting standards. Leaders of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, again, not particularly progressive as far as I'm concerned, are discussing policy platforms that could serve as a litmus test for presidential contenders. Progressive donors, meanwhile, are plotting steps ranging from closer engagement with campaigns to ultimata, tied to fundraising to ensure that Medicare for all, debt-free college, and a non-militaristic foreign policy, among other causes, remain at the center of the upcoming campaign.
Sounds like communism.
In an effort to winnow the burgeoning field, progressive advocacy groups are beginning to poll supporters in the hopes of elevating candidates who gain the imprimatur of the left. Representative Pramila Jayapal, co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, told progressive donors at a private conference here this week, a portion of which was opened exclusively to Politico, quote, "You don't just get to say that you're progressive," end quote. Jayapal, a Washington Democrat, that is Washington State, called the 2020 election a chance to, quote, "leverage our power," end quote, but she called it critical, quote, "that we have some very clear guidelines about what it means to be progressive," end quote. Hey, Pramila, I have a modern progressive manifesto you could, consult and find out. Because, like I said, I don't think the Progressive Caucus is particularly progressive myself. Anyway.
Don't they get overtaken by neoliberal?
What the thing is about the Congressional Progressive Caucus is that so many of their members take contributions from corporate sources, shall we say, and that's kind of a big no-no among real progressives. Not real progressives, the group, but modern progressives, the movement. For progressive Democrats, the 2020 primary carries all the markings of a watershed election in a party that was once hesitant to fully embrace its left flank. It still is, guys, come on. Particularly in presidential elections, they fucking changed their charter and bylaws to keep from ever nominating another progressive for president. Anyway, the rise of progressive populism has manifested in top-tier candidates, several of whom believe the time is ripe to take their unalloyed liberal message to a national audience. These are not interchangeable terms, motherfuckers. Progressive and liberal are not the same thing. They haven't been since they first distinguished themselves at the end of World War II. One sign of the new times, according to research by Elaine Kamark and Alexander Podkul at the Brookings Institution, nearly 44% of House primary candidates this year identified themselves as progressives, up from about 20% in 2016. In the presidential election that year, supporters of Senator centrist, again, not centrist, right-wing, Democrat Hillary Clinton, self-described progressive Democrats occupy the upper rungs of the 2020 field, potentially including Sanders, but also, and here we go, but also Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat from California, and Representative Beto O'Rourke, Democrat from Texas, among others. None of those people are progressive except Bernie. I'm sorry, Politico, but you don't know what you're talking about. And keep using progressive and liberal as if they're synonymous, and they're not. And I will address this in a moment. Elbowing past one another in recent months, such top-tier Democrats have staked out increasingly liberal positions on immigration, criminal justice, tax policy, and campaign finance, positions beyond where Barack Obama was willing to go in 2008. K. Sabil Rahman, president of the left-leaning think tank Demos, said, quote, we're sort of in this really bizarre window where, for a number of reasons, many of the leading candidates are sort of tripping over themselves to claim a progressive mantle. And we have to make sure that that progressive mantle means something really progressive, and that means we should set the table, and we should set that table now, end quote. The donor gathering in the Los Angeles area, organized by the progressive donor network Way to Win, served as a reminder of the growing influence of left-leaning donors and activists in a party long dominated by more, and again, still centrist, it's not centrist, by more centrist money and ideas. Way to Win steered some $22 million to political efforts in the 2018 elections, and its supporters' aspirations were reflected in the prayer candles on hand at the conference, featuring the images of 3 progressive champions: Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat of California; Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York; and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yet, as the progressive movement expands, it has done so with limited definition, leaving progressive leaders to fret about more moderate Democrats, both in Congress and in the presidential race, claiming the label without supporting the cause. Jayapal, a Washington Democrat, told Politico of her growing caucus, quote, not that we have to have 100% of people with us on 100% of votes. We want to make sure that there is room for people to reflect the differences in their district. But at the same time, if you really are a progressive, then we don't want you to be voting against progressive positions 30% of the time, much less 80% of the time, end quote. Oh no, she goes on. We're figuring out exactly what that looks like, but we want to be protective of what it means to be a progressive, because I think if we don't, we erode people's trust in us as progressive leaders, end quote. And the article goes on a few more paragraphs, and I'm not going to read it all, but again, the link will be in the video description for those who would like to read it. And let me see, did I already put it there? No, I gotta put it there. So one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this in particular is because I have an article which is being published by Real Progressives, the group Real Progressives. I thought it would be published by now. I'm not sure if it has been, So in this article, I discuss the meaning of the name progressive and the 4 different camps which have tried to claim the name over the past, 30 years. Or it goes back to 1946, which is the only one that I think has any legitimate claim to the name. Those people whom I call modern progressives, and I count myself among them. The father of modern progressivism was Henry Wallace. Modern progressivism began during the time that Henry Wallace had been fired by Truman from the position of Secretary of Commerce, and was the editor-in-chief of The New Republic, which was a magazine that was started in 1913 by the historical progressives. Henry Wallace was himself a progressive Republican before he became a progressive Democrat in 1936. He was tapped by Franklin Roosevelt, to be his second vice president in 1940. There's a little bit more that I talk about in there, talking about Henry Wallace, and then the distinctions between
social... Give us this much detail. Read us the whole article.
No. And the distinctions between social liberals and modern progressives, and then I talk about how the history between those 2 camps has involved a number of conflicts, and why it was so odd that some of the social liberals started calling themselves progressives after the 1988 election without changing any of their views or adopting any progressive ideals. And then the 3rd group that came up around late 2011 and into 2012, and then the more recent group that seems to have formed around 2016. Camps, I should say, not groups, because they're none of these are organized. None of them have any official leadership. They do have certain individuals that they regard as influential, worthy of respect or whatever. But anyway, then I make some distinctions between the groups, and then I offer some concluding remarks. There are footnotes, there are sources for further reference. So hopefully that will be published at the Real Progressives website today, tonight, if it hasn't already been published sometime today. And if not, then hopefully tomorrow. I'm not really sure what the holdup is. I was contacted earlier to add some references, and I did, and let the person know that I did, and I was told he would check it in a second, and over an hour later, nothing. I asked what was going on, and he wasn't, and I think he hasn't been online since then. But anyway, when it becomes available, it will be at www.realprogressivesusa.com, and they have a non-exclusive license to publish the article in perpetuity, depending on certain conditions, which are stated in the copyright notice. And non-exclusive means that I can publish it myself somewhere else, and I will. It will be on my blog and then on the Progressive Flame, which is my publication on Medium. But I would like for you all to check it out at Real Progressives. I'm going to give them a little bit of time to have it exclusively before I publish it elsewhere. And so yeah, go and check it out there. And it's called,
oh my God.
The name Progressive, its proponents, would-be usurpers, and wannabe exploiters. And you'll see, it's by Giovanna Lane, which is me. So, yeah, go check it out.
The long-winded, long-wind bag.
You hush. Hey, you know what? You're the one who wanted to read an extra article. Remember, even after complaining that I made you read an article, you picked out another article to read.
Yes, I will complain that you made me read that article.
Well, I can't read them all. I wanted to give a fair, even number of articles for each of us to read.
I propose we reduce the amount of articles read down.
No. But we have been going for almost 3.5 hours now.
Yeah, all of them reading articles. I propose we reduce the amount to 4.
No.
I heard Lord Blastington votes with me.
This is a show that we don't have a time limit on, so we can sit here all night if need be, but I'm not going to do that. We will be calling it quits in a little bit.
You have a hard limit on the Friday show, yet you keep posting.
Yeah.
You go through.
Yeah, I know. I've got those that I need to go through and finish the editing on. But, I got some issues with my encoder. As I rendered the video from the original recording that I had, which was 3.2... No, I think it was 3. I know. Oh, it was 2.31 gigabytes in the original recording. So I cut out about 2 minutes at the beginning and 2 minutes at the end, which were just extraneous noise and stuff that weren't supposed to be in the video. And then I rendered it, and it came out 3.21 gigabytes. So it's bigger than it was before, when it still had like 4 or 5 more minutes in it. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that's supposed to work, right? So I ran it back through again, and it came out at 3.19 gigabytes. Well, okay, we got a little bit smaller, but can we get it smaller still? So I still got to fuck with it a little bit and see what the hell is going on. I think I'm probably just going to cut that one up into different pieces and release them as individual videos, topical.
Just let YouTube keep this big old stream.
Huh?
And then just let YouTube keep the stream, then make it private, then cut it up into pieces.
That's what I do have it on YouTube, and it is private. You can't see it even with the link. Yeah, and the problem was I think it cut off a little earlier or something. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway. Let me see exactly how long it is. The real video that I recorded locally at the same time I was streaming is an hour and 56 minutes and 22 seconds, but the stream on YouTube, yeah, there was a disconnection, so it's in two parts. One of them is less than 20 minutes, and the other one is less than an hour and a half. So it's not the full show. So, and the one that I just told you about, the one that's like an hour and 56 minutes, is after I've cut out time at the beginning and end. So it's still longer than the two pieces that are there now, but they're both private and they're both still on my channel, but only I can see them. The one from the one from 2 weeks ago that I did is still on the is still on YouTube on my channel, but it's unlisted. So if you've got the link, you can watch it, but it's only 37 minutes and 33 seconds, and the full recording is an hour and 11 minutes and 1 second. So yeah, that one needs to be redone too. Or I can just upload it as it is, but I'll figure that one out later. Anyway, so there we are. Let's see. I don't know, is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about? I know Ryan seemed to be interested in talking about Star Trek Online and ship sizes.
Well, earlier, but I kind of like said all I wanted to say, because I just kind of saw the new ship, and it was huge, like for a warship style ship, like it's huge.
Was it bigly?
Those were bigly.
Yeah. All right.
At first, yeah, I kind of said what I wanted to get. I just saw it, and it kind of like, whoa.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I have 440 of those marked thingies that for the winter event. I shall have the ship eventually.
Oh, I think I've got 120 because I haven't been in game much, but I'll get it. Don't worry.
No, you haven't. You've been in game like twice or something.
Huh? I've been in game more than you know. Sometimes I go in game while you're at work, you silly boy. Didn't you realize that I play the game when you're not here?
No.
Well, I do. I've been in more than twice anyway. So, I mean, how many? You get 40 for each, so I've been in at least 3 times, right? Because that's 120, right? Yeah.
You get 40 and you need 1,000.
Yeah, I know. It's a pain.
Yeah, I guess if you want to speed it up, you can spend Loba.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah, Lobi crystals. Yeah.
I know, but I'm thinking like the ship is actually. Look at some of the ship stats in the warship, and it kind of like the Iceberg warship like stats. But looking at the sides, it kind of look more like maybe a cruiser type ship.
Well, what's the turn rate on it?
16.
Hmm.
Yeah, that thing actually, but that thing exceeds the size of like almost every like cruiser type ship in the game. Like it exceeds the size of, well, it exceeds the size of the Sovereign and the Odyssey, and even exceeds the size of the Vengeance. Like then there when I saw it, like I saw like someone with a Vengeance ship just sip pie, and and the Vengeance seemed tiny compared to that thing.
I guess I'll have to come in and see someone with one and compare it to my Valkys, because yeah, the Valkys is a huge fucking ship. It's a great ship, but it's so much inertia, and the turn rate is so low. It's not as bad as you know, the derp flying brick of the Deridex, but still.
Yeah. The double D.
Though, I'm them kind of make me thinking, like, see, like, how, like, ship physics works. Like, most of, like, the ship combat takes place in space, where there's really actually, like, nothing to resist. Like, there's no air, water, and probably most importantly, gravity. So I'm thinking, like, well, but how the ships move is kind of like how like something like flies through an atmosphere or in water. So, like, that's what it feels like, and I think, like, in space, like, with like how maneuverability and flight speed will it'd be the same thing. Like, I don't think it'll be like this exactly the same thing. Like,
No, I don't know. Space is a gel, though.
anyhow. But I'm just thinking, like, I don't think, like, the sort of space gameplay is kind of accurate to how would an actual object move into space, because actually in space it's actually pretty easy to move anything very, very fast. All you need is just like a force pushing something in a direction. Even if it's a light force, it makes things easy to move. Like,
yeah. Well, I'd like for them to make it fully three-dimensional too. Right now it's mostly two-dimensional. You can move a little bit up and a little bit down, but you can't go straight up and you can't go straight down, and there are things that you can't do, and it's like, this is space, man. It's not you're not flying over the Earth or something. Why don't we have three-dimensional movement here?
well, it is kind of like three-dimensional, except it's kind of like more like how like a plane goes up and down. Like, you have to like constantly going, and you have to just face up. Like, but yeah, like.
Well, I still want it to be fully three-dimensional and have room to maneuver going up and down, as well as around left and right and forward and backward.
Yeah.
Because, there was a game I used to play from the early 90s. I think I got it in 92. And I played it until the Y2K shit, and everybody got new computers and stuff. And I think I might have even played it a little bit after that. It was called Knights of the Sky, and it was a World War I fighter pilot game. And I loved that game. I played, for at least 8 years. I logged thousands of hours in this. It was essentially a flight simulator. It's somewhat primitive because, 1992, but still. I'm fairly confident that I could fly a biplane from that era, from that experience. But, it's not real. It's simulated, so I would probably need a little bit of training. But yeah, I think I could do it. And I loved it. It was great. I played it for hours and hours sometimes, and I played the entire war several times, and there would be times when the war would end early, and there would be times when the war would end like in 1924 instead of 1918, right? So it's kind of maybe some of the stuff that you did in the game did have some effect, on the duration of the war and so on.
Wow.
It's a pretty cool game. You can get it on Steam. It's kind of a DOS emulator type thing that they're doing because it was a DOS game.
Yeah, and she wants to play War Thunder for, what was it? The Russian biplanes?
Polikarpov PO2, the one that the Night Witches flew.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. It's a biplane. I can fly it. I'm quite confident in my ability to fly a biplane.
Though, like, I'm guessing, like, maybe, like, what's in the game does not really translate what's in real life, because you think Like, do you think playing Call of Duty would make you like a good soldier? Like,
Well, there are
Yes.
people who have learned stuff from these games. Like, I don't know. I think it was America's Army. Was that the name of the game? A few years ago, there was someone who saved a life because of the medic training that he had in that game. So, I mean,
really?
there are some real-world applications. And, the thing about Knights of the Sky is it has difficulty settings. If you get it turned all the way up to the highest difficulty, it's pretty accurate. You can crash and kill yourself, and stuff like that. And the game is over for you, really. You can crash and, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, you have to learn how to land. You really do have to learn how to land on that highest difficulty setting. So that was always a little tricky getting started. But once you have practiced a bit, you can do it.
Okay, now I want to see the Mighty Jingles play that game.
The Mighty Jingles?
Yep.
Who is that?
Basically, he's a YouTuber. He's like 50 plus years old. Like, he's known for doing what he calls a jingles landing, which is the incarnate of any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. Yeah, he did that so often in War Thunder, he just coined the term.
I see.
It's so funny because he even, in one game he was playing, for part of the mission, he had to steal a boat. And he did a jingles landing boat. Don't ask. He just did it.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Alright, well, anything else on you guys' minds?
Well, I kind of like went into saw some a Twitter spot between Walls and Sargon, which kind of make me think that probably best we don't get involved in.
Oh, some kind of Twitter spat?
Yeah, it got to do with something to do. It got to do with. I think it finally revealed the reason why Sargon was kicked off of Patron.
Was it because he joined UKIP?
And no, I think it was mostly due to actually him violating hate speech rules because of that, his white N-word tirade.
Really?
Yeah,
that is stupid. He's done so much more offensive stuff than that.
Well, he's.
I know,
This is what, his third or fourth account on Twitter, too?
But yeah, I'd say see kind of Law saying that he technically Law said he technically did violate their terms of service, and of course that kind of led on to a spat between him and other people. When you think about hate speech is a pretty broad, is a very broad term. It is. If you're going to say if you go by that, so you can say that technically Sargon did violate the terms of service. So. So yeah, I'd say Waz maybe does have a point. Waz Lee does have a point there, and.
Oh, this is a Waz video?
No, it was actually a first fight between Waz and Sargon.
Oh, they were fighting on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because I do follow Waz on Twitter, and I am subscribed to his channel, so I ought to see something eventually in my notifications if I keep scrolling through them, but I'm not going to do it right now.
Yeah, I kind of think, of course, when I look at it, probably everything is based that one of those things is probably good in not to get involved.
Yeah.
Oh, did anyone see Ted Cruz with a beard?
Oh my god.
No, seriously, I was watching Deep Fat Fried, And like, just like, dear God, dude's got a beard. Oh man, yeah, here it is. Here's the video. Drop in the text channel. Like the guy even sounds less smarmy.
Are you sure
I
it
mean,
was
it's a
really
terrible
him?
look. It's him. He looks so much better.
Goodness.
And then, you compare him to Beto O'Rourke, and it's just like, oh, God.
Well, Beto, my goodness.
Hey, guys, let's insult the AR-15 and call for its banning in Texas places. Like, hey, Beto.
Maybe he was picked to lose.
Well, I think generally, like, see, like, it is though, like, I think, though, like, in general, yes, it depends on what case it is, but it probably is if you want change, it probably is a good idea to actually go for the guy that's willing to have the audacity to do to do the most controversial stuff, like.
Well, it's Texas.
Yeah, it is Texas, and you don't fuck around with our firearms in Texas. See, this is one of those things. I was talking with someone recently in some Discord server, I don't remember which one, but I said something about my PPKS, my Walther PPKS pistol, and the dude kind of freaked out a bit, and then, oh, you come from the Hunter S. Thompson side of the left, and I go, huh? Oh, yeah. And then I realized what he was talking about. I go, oh, yeah, I do. Because in my opinion, it's mostly a Democratic Party thing to go for this gun control stuff. Leftists have a history of opposing gun control. I mean, even Karl Marx said it would be a bad idea to disarm the workers, So, I mean, you don't get much further left than Karl Marx, and I'm nowhere near that far left, but yeah. But yeah, the Democrats have a long history of being gun control advocates, and I don't really see that a lot in the left, which, the Democrats are not the left. I keep saying this over and over again. The Democrats are not the fucking left. They're not even part of the left. They never have been a leftist party. When they were founded, they were a party of the landed gentry. And then shortly thereafter, they also started representing merchants in the towns. And then for a long time, they were the small business party, as the Republicans were the big business party. And this has been true ever since the Republicans got into power in 1861. They've always represented big business. They've always been for, deregulation. They've been for, tariffs, which they're great for industry, industrialized cities, but not so great for rural areas, not so great for workers, even in the industries. There was a brief period of time when you had some Republicans that were not like that. So around the first decade or two of the last century, so like with Teddy Roosevelt and people like him. And then there was another brief period in the 50s when you had Eisenhower. But all the other time of the Republican Party, they've been a big business party. And then the Democrats joined them after the 1992 election, when they put Bill Clinton in office. Moved to the right and embraced big business donors and so forth. But yeah, there's, a lot of people want to point to FDR and say, well, that was a leftist. No, not really. See, the Democrats used to be centrist. And Franklin Roosevelt was an example of that. As a party, as a whole, I mean, there were certainly factions within the party, just as there are factions in every party. So, I mean, you had a lot of the Southern Democrats at the time, and maybe still to this day, who are socially conservative, and maybe a little more pro-business. But at the time that Franklin Roosevelt was in office, he was a centrist. He was slightly left-tinged at first, and toward the end of his life and the end of his presidency, he became more left-leaning instead of just left-tinged, but he was still a centrist. What he gave us was a social democracy, which is a centrist economic perspective. Social democracy is a mixed economy with some elements of capitalism and some elements of socialism. So it's a centrist thing. But he was fought by the party establishment every step of the way. They didn't want him to nominate Henry Wallace in 1940. They refused to let him nominate Henry Wallace in 1944 for his vice president. That's why we wound up with Truman as president after Roosevelt died instead of Henry Wallace. I can go on, but you know, these are things that I've talked about repeatedly here on this channel and in my articles. There's a little bit about it in the article that's supposed to be published, hopefully, in the near future. But yeah, so I don't want to spoil anything too much. But yeah, so yeah, they've never been a leftist party. That's just bullshit. They've never been a party of the people or a party of the workers. Those are myths or propaganda, not facts. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's this is why I was taking issue with that last Politico article I was reading, where it kept referring to them as centrists. They haven't been centrists since 1989, really. And that was when the movement began, I guess, began to gain some traction anyway, to a point where it became dominant. And then when Bill Clinton became president, it was just cemented in. And now you've got people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer who refuse to even consider changing course. No, fuck no, we're going to keep chasing the Republicans to the right. Why? You losing elections left and right, all over the place. You're losing elections. You lost how many people in the two houses of Congress under Nancy Pelosi's inept leadership? Come on. Well, we're just capitalists, and that's just how it is. No, that ain't just how it is. You're ignoring the base, and you're pushing the base away, and the base is leaving your party in droves. That's why the Democratic Party is a dead party already, and they just haven't realized it yet. I mean, you know, they're kept alive on a feeding tube and a machine to keep their vital functions going, but they're brain dead now. So I mean, it's time to pull the plug and remove the feeding tube and let the corpse be buried. It's already stinking. There we go. So that's my little mini rant about that. I mean, I can go on if you want me to, but I've said all of this before.
Make a video about it.
I probably have. I mean, I'm sure I've said it before in other streams and stuff. Or actually, there's an article I wrote called A Response to Democratic Party Apologists or something like that. That's on my... It's on the Progressive Flame. You can go and check that out, where I basically told them, you told us you didn't need us, it didn't work out for you, now you're trying to blame us for your own fuck-ups, and no. You said you didn't need us, and the Green Party invited us to come and help build and own their party. I was already greenish anyway, I wasn't a Democrat, but I went ahead and joined the Green Party that year. And now you're trying to blame us for Trump, and that's your fault, motherfuckers. We told you burn your bust, and you didn't believe us. Oh, they're just like the Puma people, Party Unity, my ass. They'll come around just like the Puma people did, but we didn't. More of us, I guess, voted for Hillary than the Puma people voted for Obama, but still wasn't enough because Hillary is such a polarizing candidate. So yeah, I think probably the majority of people who left after the 2016 Democratic National Convention haven't gone back and don't intend to. I certainly don't intend. Well, like I said, I never was a member of the Democratic Party, but I did tend to vote Democratic from about 1986 till 1994. And then in 1996, I proudly cast my vote for Ralph Nader, Green Party nominee for president. And I've regretted votes that I cast for Republicans, and I've regretted votes that I cast for Democrats, but I've never regretted a vote that I cast for a Green Party member. So, I mean, there's something there. Now, of course, most of them haven't been elected. So maybe I would if they had been elected and got in office and fucked up. But, yeah. Anyway. So we've been going for getting close to 4 hours now.
And we're still going?
Yeah, I'm still, I don't want to just dominate this with rants about the Democratic Party. I've done that often, and it's just like me going over old ground that I've already been over many times. So if you guys
and we're getting tired of it.
Well, if you guys don't have anything to talk about, I'm gonna fill up the dead air, right? So you guys got anything to talk about, or do I go ahead and say goodnight to the one or two people watching?
I got nothing much. Got really nothing, so I guess have a good night.
All right,
good
then.
Night. I also thought that we reduced the amount of stories we cover.
What? No. This was a different...
Yes.
No, this is a different thing, man. All right, but anyway, so anybody that's watching now or later, thanks for tuning in. I do have a Discord server for my subscribers. Please do subscribe. Hit the like button if you enjoyed or felt this was informative. And subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified of all new content. I do have a Discord server for my subscribers. Please consider joining that. We've got some interesting conversations. Not everything that we talk about in there gets posted on Facebook or Google Plus or Twitter or YouTube. So, you might find some other conversations in there. I talk a little bit. There's a little bit more philosophy in there. I do have a channel devoted to philosophy. And got a channel on history. We've got a channel on TV shows, movies, books, comic books, magazines, whatever. Got a visual art channel. Got a channel dedicated to felines because felines are a superior species.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are. They're people just like we are.
No, they're not. They're that shitty roommate you can't get rid of and does nothing.
No. They're adorable little fluffy creatures. And they're people. Every cat that has ever shared my life has had a distinct personality. I had one cat who would argue with me. He would backtalk me when I got onto him, and he would frown. I have never seen a cat frown before or since, but he would frown and he would chatter back at me like, "Don't tell me no," that kind of stuff, I mean, he wasn't saying anything I could understand, but I could tell he didn't like that I was getting on to him, right? And he adored green olives out of the jar because I used to go to the refrigerator and open the door and use a cocktail fork to get a green olive out with pimiento and eat it. And one time I accidentally dropped one off the fork and he pounced on it, because it's a moving object, and he's like, "Oh, something to play with." And he ate it. And he looked up at me licking his chops like, "Give me another one." And I'm like, "Oh, not now." But, so from that point on, I would give him a green olive every time I went to the refrigerator to eat one. And he loved them. I don't think I can. I've never had another cat that wanted green olives. I've tried to give them to cats and they just didn't seem interested, but he loved them. I have a cat now that will drink out of the jug as I'm pouring water into her bowl. I've never seen a cat do that before. They definitely have distinct personalities and distinct personality quirks. They are people. Every cat is a person. They're not human persons, but they are persons. So anyway,
You're that terrible roommate that does nothing.
No, I'm going to start quoting H.P. Lovecraft to you about the noble cat in a moment if you don't stop. But anyway, so
Lovecraft's overrated.
Yeah, so I have a Discord server. Come hang out with us. We talk. We share news articles and videos and so forth, and art and music and so forth. Has several voice channels. I also have a Patreon. If you like what I do here and or at the Progressive Flame, please consider becoming my patron through Patreon. The link for that and for my Discord server are both in the video description. Until next time, have fun, but stay safe. For Republic News, this is Liviana signing off. And